think Tevez going to Juventus, what a coup that was for me. I mean,
on a head-to-head battle, Atletico Madrid can do more damage to Barcelona than the other way around.
Either he's really blind or he's fixing the match. I can't see it any other way.
It is an upset. You would expect Man United to go and win there.
Over $1 billion was paid in transfer fees between the clubs in Europe.
And Bayern Munich are going to be favourites for me against anybody at home in the world. The 03-04 season, actually, Olympiacos have won 8 of the last 10 domestic league campaigns, so there is only really one team in Greece, which we kind of already knew.
Because things have been pretty much decided, just as a quick glance before we go through the table, PSG is going to lock up this thing with 1 more point. Monaco's solidly in second place. Lille is going to be in that Champions League qualifier position, 7 points ahead of Saint Etienne. If you're a serious talent, you're going back and you're playing for Santos. You're going back to play for, like in Argentina, for River Plate or Boca Juniors, or you're going to Europe.
He looked like the Ryan Giggs of old. He was more creative than any player on the pitch. He made Mata look stupid. He made Rooney look silly.
I am your host, Joe Usello. My trusted co-host, Ben the Machine. Ben, how are you tonight? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Memorial Day edition of Low Limit Football on Low Limit Poker Radio. I am your host, Joe Usello. Tonight's episode is number 29. Joining me shortly will be Ben the Machine. He is back and better than ever, just doing a little touch up on his show and his show notes before we get on, trying to get back into the swing of things. He's been gone for a few weeks, so we have a very, very big show in store for you tonight. It's amazing that we haven't seen football played in Europe in about 2 weeks, but we've got a huge show planned. We're going to go over our predictions back at the beginning of the season, what teams we thought were going to win each individual competition, the 5 big leagues in Europe. We're going to recap each league and kind of our closing thoughts on them. If any transfers, anything big has come up, we're going to talk about that. So that is going to come up as well. We're going to then head over and talk quickly about Benfica in Portugal. I wanted to hit a quick fact on them this week. Going to recap the Champions League match from Saturday. That was a big, exciting match. And we're going to pat somebody on the back for their prediction on that match. That was the big Atletico Real Madrid match that we had this weekend. And then we're going to get into the World Cup preview, and this one is going to be a big one for me personally, because we've got Germany, Portugal, Ghana, and the United States. And unless you've been under a rock in the United States, there has been some big news about it this week. I haven't had a chance to go over to William Hill and see if the odds have changed since they named the squad, but that is going to be something we're going to certainly talk about. Very excited to do that. And then our MLS preview tonight. We're going to have 3 more teams to talk about, and we'll hit the scores and highlights on the matches this week. We're going to talk about the Portland Timbers, the Colorado Rapids, and the Columbus Crew. This is going to be a mainstay until we hit all of the teams in the MLS, and then MLS coverage will supplement our transfer window coverage going through the summer, and obviously, of course, the World Cup. And then finally, we're going to close it out with what I would say is a little bit more of a comical SirBob's ManCity Corner personally. Somebody's gotten their tail feathers a little ruffled. So it's going to be interesting to talk about this week's SirBob's ManCity Corner. Waiting to see if SirBob is going to be in the chat because I'm sure he's going to have a little something to say about it, and I really can't wait for that to happen. So like I said, first things first, in the United States, today is a holiday, so I understand if we don't have nearly as many listeners as we used to, or as we normally would. It is Memorial Day, where we honor this country's fallen heroes who have died in war and peacetime for our military. So we'd like to send a thank you to all our troops, to all their friends and family, those who have given the utmost for this country, so that we can enjoy the freedom to be able to come on the air and discuss these things without fear of repercussion or anything like that. This is a free country, and it's free because of the people that have come before us. So, a great thank you to all of us at Low Limit Football for everything you do. And John, who actually runs Low Limit Poker Radio, is a veteran. So he'll be on later on tonight. So a personal thank you to him for everything he's done for this country. And while we're on the subject of John, just to let people know that later on tonight, it's estimated at 9 o'clock Eastern tonight, we will be having the Low Limit Poker Radio World Series of Poker Fantasy Draft. It's a live draft. And we held it last year, and my co-host, if I remember correctly, was the ultimate champion of the draft, or of the World Series of Poker. So we'll see if he can repeat this year as well. So, and like I said, I'm just waiting for him to come back and get himself prepared. And I don't want to jump into the plan too much here just as of yet. I'm going to give him a few more minutes. But one thing I do want to talk about quickly is I just want to recap our predictions from the season. At the beginning of the year, when we started 29 episodes ago, we decided that we were going to talk about the different leagues in Europe. That was going to be our main focus. And then obviously with the Champions League and Europa League, as things came on, we would talk about it. We talked about the transfer window and what teams did in the transfer window and how we felt that would help or hurt them moving forward. For example, Gareth Bale going to Real Madrid. And we've talked about it time and time again about how late he was added to the team, where we felt that the acquisition of Neymar at Barcelona was a better acquisition because it was done earlier. So that was kind of one of the things that had kicked off this show. Some of the other things, Carlos Tevez leaving Man City, we had talked about before going to Juventus. We felt that would take that would come into play for them. Some of the other factors, Edison Cavani going to PSG was another big one, and Radamel Falcao going to Monaco at the time was another big acquisition that we felt could change the face of football in Europe. So we'll kind of go through those quickly. We're going to talk about each league's individual champion, what we feel like is going to happen moving forward. Any other little knickknacks and interesting little factoids that we've found or that we've come across over the past 29 episodes or 28 episodes. This would be 29. That we'll go ahead and give you. We'll kind of lay them out there for folks to digest, I guess, is the best way to go about it. So back in August, Ben and I decided to make predictions of who we felt would win each division. So, just going through the different predictions, Ben and I pretty much held form for our predictions in terms of who would win each league, all the way down and up to the Premier League. And I'll give you the layups for the first three that I know were the easy ones. And they were PSG in Ligue 1, Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, and Juventus in Serie A. I don't think there was much of a dispute between the two of us, and even going into our prediction of Barcelona as the eventual champion in La Liga, we felt that we were on pretty firm ground there making that prediction, especially with the selection of Neymar. We felt that Barca was a pretty safe bet, and up until week 30, up until week 37, and even into week 38, they still had an opportunity to do it. So, I am going to let Ben come on and talk about that because I know he's done a heck of a lot of prep work for La Liga. The Bundesliga, I think when we talked about it in our pre-show meeting, the Bundesliga, we're going to kind of, breeze over it. There's a couple little factoids in there, but the Bundesliga is the Bundesliga. That was decided back in March, and although we've reported the scores and the teams and things that have happened there, really not a whole heck of a lot to talk about there. So we'll skim through the Bundesliga, but as we said, that kind of went to former as we expected. I think the big discussion that Ben and I are going to have once he comes on, which will just be in another minute or two, is going to be the Premier League. That is, I'm sure, going to be something that we'll go into great detail about. I'm going to pat myself on the back on that one. Ben will get his accolades later on in the show, but I think I'll certainly take the pat on the back, and thanks to SirBob, I'll definitely take the pat on the back for the Premier League. I went 4 for 5 on Champions. Ben went 3 for 5 on Champions. So, and obviously we both got Barcelona wrong. That was kind of ridiculous. We really expected Barca to do it, but through all the injuries they suffered, one thing we'd talked about in the show previously was the fact that they didn't really do much in the transfer window to strengthen their defense moving forward. Puyol was constantly sidelined with a knee injury. They did lose Piqué later on, and also they lost Lionel Messi. And I understand Barca wants to play defense by offense and defense by possession, but clearly it wasn't enough to do anything. And when you think about it, Barca is one of those teams that you would easily put them in the top 5, top 10 in the world in terms of club teams. And to my recollection, they didn't even win a title this year. They won no trophies. So that's going to be something that I think they're going to have to look in the mirror and talk about later. We'll talk about their coaching situation. Who's out, who's in, which happened as well this week. So we're definitely going to want to talk about that, and and what Barca needs to do in the transfer market to get through this. Ligue 1, just real quickly. Like I said, Ben and I both had PSG winning that one. Plain and simple, no surprises there. Obviously Monaco we thought might challenge them, but they are again on the in second place and just didn't have enough there. And then losing Radamel Falcao when they did was rather interesting. It's something that obviously pretty much ended their chances. So it's something that they probably could have done a little bit better with Falcao joining them, but he didn't hold on. So right now, joining me after a little bit of a hiatus is the one and only Ben the Machine. Ben, what's going on, man?
Hey, how are you going, Joe? It's nice to be back after a hiatus, but unfortunately there's some stuff behind the scenes. A few personal things, so I couldn't really do anything about it. But I'm back now, better than ever, and after a long shift at work, but I couldn't let the fans down. I couldn't let you down, Joe, and we enjoy talking football. So
exactly, no, and I'm glad you're back. And Ben, just a real quick, what did you think of the new intro music?
I think it's really good music. I must admit, I was even telling my parents about that, saying that the intro that you mixed for the show was brilliant. It sounded very professional, and I hope that people that listen to the show enjoy it. I think it puts our own mark on it, and I guess it's a semi-brand now. We're away from the poker and onto the football, which is our show, and we're doing well.
That's right, and that's the first time I've ever mixed anything. So, You
wouldn't know. It is very good. Like I said, it kind of makes it feel like our own now. So,
well, Ben, let's jump into it, man. Football's been over for 2 weeks in Europe, and I held off. I obviously did the show solo last week, and I held off on doing any kind of recap or review because I didn't want to do it without you. So, why don't you jump into La Liga? You've covered it all season. Let's do it.
Just give me 2 seconds, Joe. Just because the windows are open in my room, and I don't want to.
No, go ahead and get yourself squared away. Ben, while you're running and doing that, I gave out a little bit of a recap in terms of what our predictions were back at the beginning of the season. So we'll touch a base on them all again. The only place you and I differed was the Premier League. But we both got La Liga wrong. So but that was probably the most exciting league of all of them. I would even say it rivaled the Premier League, and by the strength of La Liga and all the teams winning all the European titles. I mean, before you get into it, are we looking at the best league in Europe?
It's very close. It is very close. I know I did say earlier on in the season that I thought, and I've said it a few times to you as well, Joe, that I thought the English league was the best league just because of the depth. But Atletico have really, really proved that there's so much depth in that league now. I mean, Atletico, supposedly they weren't going to challenge for the top three, and now they've broke the top three on top of the top three, and you've got to say there's 3 really, really good teams in Spain now.
I agree, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens to all three teams moving forward next year, to see if Atletico can hold on to their pieces and continue their reign, or are we going to see the big spenders spend big and just blow them out of the way. So go ahead and start us off. I don't know, how do you want to do it? Do you want to do a review of the tables first, or?
We can do a review of the table first if that's what you want to do. I did want to talk a little bit about Atletico, because I feel like I think any team that achieves what they achieved there deserves more than an honourable mention in my opinion. So I did do a little bit of prep for them, but I will run through the table first, just so we can get an idea of how they won and what the point situation looked like at the end. Okay. The final standing for La Liga was Atletico Madrid on 90 points in first position, and Barcelona and Real Madrid both on 87 points. Only one goal difference separating them both. 67 goal difference for Barcelona and 66 for Madrid. So you can see not only did they win the league, but they won it by 3 points in the end, Joe. Right. I know we was talking about it throughout the season. Could they maintain it? Are they good enough to maintain it? And they all stepped up. The whole team stepped up. The manager stepped up. And like I said, I've done a piece on them, and I hope that if somehow any Atletico Madrid get to listen to this, get to listen to this, they won't feel like we're leaving them out. But like I said, I'm going to talk about them a bit. It's a massive, massive season for them. Joe touched upon it. I've touched upon it. We were saying it's the best league in the world, and this is partly mostly because of how Atletico Madrid have broke these teams. There's nothing for me this season anywhere in the world that rivals what Atletico have done this season. For me, it's bigger news for me than us talking about Bayern Munich being miles ahead or Manchester United, being 7th in the Premier League. This for me is the real story. So I want to spend a little bit of time on it. Absolutely beyond the realms of anyone that's an Atletico Madrid fan, anyone that knows anything about Spanish football, anyone that knows anything about European football. You can see this from a mile off. It's an absolute shock to the system. I must know. I pride myself on knowing the odds, and anyone's heard that a lot from me, from scorecast and things like that. I tend to know a lot about it. But one thing I didn't know actually, Joe, was what price Atletico were to win the league at the beginning of this season. I can imagine it was, probably around about 10, 12 to 1, something like that. So you can see what they thought at the beginning of the season, and then they've come along. They won the league. They only lost the Super Cup at the beginning of the season on away goals to Barcelona, so they didn't even really lose. They only lost on a formality. Mm-hmm. So maybe we should have seen it coming from then, Joe. I mean, they stood Barcelona up at the beginning of the season. But also, the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey, only going out to Real Madrid, and then runner-up in the Champions League, losing to Real Madrid again, which I'll talk about in a second as well. There's an actual review of the game. To me, they are the most improved team in the world this season. I don't think you can take a team from any other league that rivals that kind of improvement, and I think it's, like I said, it's a mark of improvement, and goes out to the whole team and the manager, everyone involved in Atletico Madrid. Because I just want
to throw in there that think about it. This is the most improved team in Europe, and they lost Radamel Falcao.
This is it.
Amazing.
This is it. I know we talked a bit off air, Joe, about if the players. We were saying what would happen if Costa goes, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. Mm-hmm. But they've proved that even when they lose players, they've got people to come in, and I think they've got a really passionate manager and a really good man manager. And I think it seems a really family orientated club. To me, the Spanish league was always a good league to watch. I mean, I show a lot of it in England, and everybody loves it. And Joe opened, is it the best league? But it was never. I'm not sure how it's perceived in America, but in England, it's always been perceived as a kind of, I don't want to say cheating league, but there tends to be more diving, more moaning, that kind of thing. And there's a bit of frustration between Barcelona and Real Madrid when they go in the Champions League. They're always trying to get small decisions that aggravate fans. But it feels to me like Atletico Madrid are really a team that you can like. You can genuinely like the team, what they stand for. And I think anyone that's not a Barcelona or Real Madrid fan wants Atletico Madrid to do well. I can't imagine there was that many people outside of Real Madrid that were cheering on Real Madrid in that final, Joe. I think everyone was happy they won the league, and I could imagine they was cheering Atletico on. I mean, even I was cheering Atletico on, and I wanted to be right about the scorecard, so it shows you, Joe. And do you follow Atletico Madrid? Do you like seeing them winning? Or?
No, I absolutely do. They're kind of I hate to call them the underdog because they're the champions, but they're a team that they're just gritty, and we've said that before here on the show. They fight. They personify their manager on the pitch. Diego Simeone was one of these feisty. I mean, he even shows it on the sidelines. One of these real feisty, aggressive, physical type guys, and he's somehow transferred that persona into this team, and that's the way this team is played. Even in the match against Real Madrid over the weekend, that's how they played it against Barcelona in that last match of the season. That's how they played it. It's just that they're an aggressive type team. It comes from an aggressive manager, and they're very blue collar, Ben, I guess is the best way to put it.
Hard working. That's the wording. I mean, I must admit, I did say to Joe before I came on the show, I have been up for about 30 hours, so I will take a few more seconds to think about a few things. But that's it. That defines it perfectly for me. Yeah. And they've just done so much this summer. We're going to talk about a few players, Joe, because a few people do need massive mentions. Talk about Courtois first, the goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. 37 games in the league, 20 clean sheets, only actually conceded 24 times, and had another 6 clean sheets in all competitions, and only missed won the league a game. Voted the best young goalkeeper of the season. I think that's obvious, really. ESPN's Player of the Year. I know there has been some injuries this year, some big injuries, Bale, Ronaldo, Messi, just to name a few. So, but you can't take anything away from that. He fully deserves the accolade for me. I do think he is Player of the Year, which is a massive thing to say in Spain. But I don't mind. I don't mind a bit of controversy when I talk about things. But to me, he's definitely one to watch in the future, Joe. And I'm quite excited to see what he does next season. Really. What do you think of him, Joe? I think he's the thing that I know. All goalkeepers have got their strengths and weaknesses, but to me, he's very, very agile. He's very agile, but he's also strong when it comes to claim crosses, which you don't seem to get from most goalkeepers. I mean, only the world class goalkeepers are agile and strong and fearless in their box.
Well, I think it's a credit to his length. He's very tall, very long arms, so he's able to go out and pull those crosses out of the air. For me, Thibaut Courtois was the best player for Atletico, more so than Diego Costa. But there will be people out there that will say it was Diego Costa, it was Diego Costa, it was Diego Costa. It wasn't. It was Thibaut Courtois. There is no doubt about it. And I think for me, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do it, but keeping Courtois, and I know you're going to get to this, keeping Courtois is going to be, for me, priority number one for Atletico. He has to stay for them to have any hope of repeating, more so than Costa or anybody like that. It's really on him. When you have a world-class goalkeeper, and I know he didn't make our top 5, Ben, for either of us at the start of the season, but when you have a world-class goalkeeper like him, you have to hang on to him. There are very few of them in the world. They don't come along very often. And when you've got one, he's gold, and you have to hold on to him. I mean, look at people we've talked about in the past, like Iker Casillas and Gigi Buffon, even Peter Cech, who we've discussed, who might be replaced by Courtois at Chelsea. These guys only happen once,
Of course.
And that's, to me, it's the most important piece of Atletico's season was certainly Courtois.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% believe that. Also, it bodes well. We're going to touch about the World Cup later on, but this really bodes well for Belgium as well, Joe, going into the World Cup. I mean, the goalkeeper that's coming out, he couldn't have been expecting this season to, not only have played that well himself, but to be part of a team that has done so much when he wasn't expecting that. So for me, like I said, and like Joe just touched upon, just one more thing to say about his skills, Joe. He seems to organise the defence really well, which is another thing that, top goalkeepers, any top goalkeeper in the world, you'll see them shouting their mouth off. I mean, I don't mention Blackburn very often in this show, but that we missed. You can see any team with a really, really good goalkeeper, when they go, not only do you miss a good shot stopper, miss a good crosser, and some of them are captains and stuff like that, but it's the voice that they give to the defence. When you've got a really good goalkeeper behind your defence and he's ordering the defence about, he can see the whole field and he's managing the defence. So you need somebody really, really confident and, like I said, someone that's not scared to have their voice heard, and I think he does that as well. But like Joe said, if Courtois was not in this team this year, 100% for me, they don't win the league. And that's why I completely agree with Joe. I mean, we don't disagree that often, that without them, they definitely wouldn't have won the league. An interesting thing, Joe, he's got 1 year left at Chelsea. He's on loan from Chelsea. So he is supposed to be going back to Chelsea. They haven't decided what's going on. What do you think is going to happen, Joe? Do you think Chelsea will take him on, offer him a new contract?
I don't know. I wish I had something better to say than that. And the reason
would you, if you was say you had to make the decision for this year? He's got 1 year left on his contract. Czech's getting older.
Yeah, I was just.
I personally. Sorry, Joe.
No, if it were me, I would send Peter Cech on his way.
I 100% agree with you. I was going to say, if this was my decision, I'd re-sign him, make him number one, and I don't know what wages Cech is on there, and drop Cech to the bench because, like I said, Czech's getting old. There's a new breed coming through, so re-sign him, put him in the team. And he's proved that he can do this at a decent level. He's played Champions League games, he's playing against Barcelona, Real Madrid. You can't, for me, let an opportunity like this go. I mean, this it seems to be another Lukaku incident for me. It seems like they've put someone out on loan. He seems to be doing really, really well. If you don't bring him back and give him a chance in the Chelsea team, then why are you loaning players out? You're loaning players out always to sell them. You don't. The point of loaning players out in general is either because of wages, which is going to be no problem at Chelsea, or because you want them to improve so then they become first team players. And surely he's done that, and he deserves to be a first team player.
I agree. It's funny you bring up that we're talking about this because it's going to be interesting to see. You're going to have a very new look Chelsea coming into the season next year, I think, and I don't think they need to be busy in the transfer market to do it, which is amazing. I think Chelsea can improve without making a move, and that's going to be fun to watch. I think, and then when you've got Crazy Jose Mourinho, I think we should call him Crazy Jose Mourinho from now on, because he's so unorthodox that you can't tell what he's planning to do next, and I think that's the way he wants it, which I admire him for that. But when he makes some of these crazy choices, and he's crazy like a fox, he's very intelligent, one of the best managers in the world. I get it, So it's going to be fun to see and that's why I say, I don't know where Thibaut Courtois is going to be next year. He could very well be back at Atletico. I have no idea. But the problem is it's not because of Courtois. I don't know. It's because of Mourinho. That's unfortunately that's how Mourinho rolls. That's what he does. So.
I agree with that. Just a quick follow-on point, actually, Joe, that I was going to say to you. If Courtois does leave, and I'm assuming that Atletico Madrid would have the whole transfer fee to spend, obviously... Oh, sorry. I completely forgot he's on loan there. But the money, they've got to go out and buy a goalkeeper, and obviously I meant the money from the Champions League they're going to get. I can't remember the exact number. I did read it. It was a couple of months ago, and... But the money they've got, they're going to have some money to spend in the off season, Joe, and obviously they're going to get the money from winning La Liga. And a lot of income, I can imagine the fan base has expanded as well. If they can go out and get a goalkeeper, Joe, for me, there's goalkeepers at Real Madrid that are not going to be playing next season, whether it's Casillas or whether it's Lopez. One of these goalkeepers won't be playing next season, and they're going to be sitting on the bench. Whether or not they would go to Atletico is... I'm not sure, but would you... This, to me, it seems like there's a gap in the market here, and I think both of those goalkeepers would do good at Atletico Madrid should the worst happen.
I was actually thinking a different way, and I was just doing a little homework on it. My choice actually would be Victor Valdez. I mean, Valdez is still under contract at Barcelona, but Barcelona just added Marc-Andre ter Stegen. and I don't know. I think Victor Valdez is on the outs. I don't think Barca is looking to do a system like they did with Casillas and Diego Lopez this year. I think they're looking at Ter Stegen, and obviously Valdez is going to come at a much bigger price tag. They're looking to do Ter Stegen and maybe somebody else. I don't think they want to keep Pinto around because he proved inadequate, let's say, for Barca at the end here. But I honestly think Valdez is on his way out. And I why wouldn't Valdez want to stay in Spain? I understand he had the ACL tear, and Ben, this one I would rely on you for your expertise playing goal with that type of injury to understand if he can do it or not. My assumption would be as an athletic training background, and a physiotype background that yes, he could, and he could do it rather easily, and it shouldn't be much of an issue for him because although he needs that explosive speed to move laterally, there's not a lot of planting and twisting done from the goaltender position. He's not, dribbling through people. So I think Valdez is going to be just fine, and you're going to get the Victor Valdez of old. The question is going to be does Barca see it that way, which I don't think they are if they're going to sign Ter Stegen. I think Victor Valdez is available.
Do you know the reason I didn't say about Valdez? I was going to disagree with you because as a goalkeeper, I know it's a very hard position unless you play that position to know what parts of the body you need to be good, well, to be fit, shall we say, or 100% for you to be 100% as a goalkeeper. And just slightly off topic, but I was in a training session last week, actually like 10 days ago, and just a ball that was overpumped hit the end of my toe, and it's not broke, it's just bruised, and I've been out for 17, 18 days because I can't stand on my tiptoes. Mm-hmm. So it shows you just the smallest things, and you'll be surprised the amount of twisting, the amount of problems I've had with around my hip and stuff like that just from playing a goal, aches and pains. And it depends for me. I think at that level, when you've got to be that good, maybe it does make a difference. And don't get me wrong, Valdez is world class, and if he can prove that he can come back to that level, yes, and maybe it would work out for Atletico because maybe you could go in with a bid and say, well, after the tear, is he as good as he would be before? And you're not going to play him and kind of lowball them, so it might work for him as well. So it's definitely an option for me, and I think the positive for them is that not only is there goalkeepers available, but there's Spanish goalkeepers available that have seen Atletico Madrid do well this year and that, don't have to be uprooted to come. So it's not the end of the world for them, Joe, and they'd be able to replace it. I mean, if you don't want to go to the La Liga Champions League finalists, then you need your head screwed on, especially if you're not going to start,
Right, exactly. I was just thinking, between the two goalies at Real Madrid, I've got to imagine that Casillas is going to be the one that's on his way out, just due to age. I don't know how old Diego Lopez is, and right now I'm actually, because I'm exhausted from working in the yard, I'm too lazy to punch it up on the computer. But I've got to think that Diego Lopez is the goaltender of the future for Real Madrid, and Casillas is on his way out. But do you want an aging Casillas? Because then the other scenario that I would think of is, what if you almost did a swap with Chelsea where you sent back Courtois and you brought in Peter Cech? I mean, that would almost be the same thing, Ben, wouldn't it?
I do think so, but once again, I'm actually, by the way, Lopez is 32. I didn't know that. Cech's exactly the same age as Lopez is 32. Yeah, I mean, as a goalkeeper, if you're a top class goalkeeper, you're going to be playing 36 to 37 for me, really. If you're really, really working hard. I mean, you look at the Ryan Giggs and stuff like that, and they're running laps, so it can be done. And I reckon they've both got 5 years ish, 4 or 5 seasons left. I'm just looking now actually to see how old Casillas is. Do you know off the top of your head?
33 years old. I just punched it up.
33 years old. Yeah, so there's not much in the three of them. There's 1 year between all three of them. So that's another idea. I mean, bring him back, play Cech the other way. If Cech knows he's not going to start and he's going to be dropped to the bench, then you could do a straight swap. Chelsea will be happy, and Atletico will have an experienced goalkeeper that will come straight into the squad. And I have no doubt that Cech could go and do a job in Spain. So, if we're thinking about this, Joe, then I can't believe that the board responsible for transfers and the manager are not clued up to this, because none of us are managers, but we've already gave them four decent options straight there. So
Sure.
We'll keep an eye on it. The other thing we want to move on to, Joe, we haven't even talked about Diego Costa yet. We're going to be all night if we don't move past Spain. But we're just going to just bang off some stats quickly. Before we even talk about him leaving, he played 35 games this season, 27 goals, 3 assists, 5 man of the matches, and then another 8 goals in the Champions League. Costa's been great this year, really, really good. And this is why, strikers get more applause. I mean, Joe scores goals, I save goals, and I don't doubt if he was in the same team, Joe, they'd talk about you and they'd never talk about me. So you can see it because the name's in the headline. You're not, you're on the front page and you're on at the tip of everyone's tongue. But this is the best part of a goal a game. It was 8 in 9 in the Champions League, so that basically is a goal a game. And 27 goals in 35 games is something silly like 0.8. It's such a good return, and he's done so well from this season. You take 27 goals away from Atletico Madrid this season even, and they're in serious trouble. Mm-hmm. So they do, for me, this is another player they really need to try and keep hold of. I know he's been linked with Chelsea, Joe, to go straight there, and we've talked about the Chelsea striker problem for, it seems like, for years. But firstly, do you think he'll go? And secondly, who would you replace him with?
Well, I think he's probably 60% to go. And again, this goes back to Mourinho. Mourinho's obviously got a striker out there who's proven to score goals in the Premier League by the name of Romelu Lukaku. Chelsea product, Chelsea property, playing at Everton, and certainly, going to be a big part of Chelsea's future plans. I don't see how he couldn't be. So, I think, first of all, and not to get totally sidetracked with the Chelsea thing, it's just unfortunate these two teams are so intertwined. I think Fernando Torres is on the way out. I also think Samuel Eto'o is on the way out because there seems to be a rift between him and Mourinho. So, I would say Costa's chances of going over are somewhere between 60 and 70%, Ben. I think there's a very, very distinct probability that he will at least talk contract with them, coming up. Maybe, now since we're so close to the World Cup, you're probably going to see this happen sometime in mid-July, I'll bet. But I don't see Atletico being able to keep him with the rich purse strings of Chelsea, beckoning for him and Jose Mourinho. I don't see it. And Mourinho knows what he's getting in Diego Costa because Mourinho was just at Real Madrid, so he knows who Diego Costa is. I mean, if you don't know by now, you're crazy. But the question is, I think, does Mourinho feel that Diego Costa fits what he's trying to do at Chelsea? If the answer is yes, then Costa might as well just put on a blue shirt now.
Yeah. I must admit, I probably would have said slightly higher than 60. I probably would have said 70, 75. I think, if you asked me, I think there's something, I wouldn't be surprised if his agent's already flown over there or something. I know they're not supposed to talk to them, but, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a newspaper headline, Diego Costa fancies it, a day in the sun in London, or, something silly like those. But as far as replacing Costa, should he go? I mean, it's always some buts, Joe, but we have to touch upon him. Somebody for me that I think will leave this year because of the financial fiasco off the field at Monaco is Falcao. I would not be surprised if Falcao gets moved on. I think I can't remember how you pronounce his name. Is it Rybolovlev? Either way, he just had a breakup from his wife and he's lost half his wealth, so he has lost a lot of money. And Falcao is on really, really big wages. So for me, he may be shipped out. Whether Atletico Madrid can pay his wages, whether they could pay the transfer fee, it depends on what they're going to get for Costa. But as far as that goes, Falcao coming in, that's quite a coup for me. He'll come in. I could see him doing a job in the Spanish league like he's done before. So you think that's an option, Joe?
I do think it's an option. And obviously he's very familiar with with the situation there at Atletico. He had just come from there to go to Monaco, so I don't. If there's a potential fire sale at Monaco, I would say that is certainly a possibility. I was starting to think somebody, even though he's unfortunately a little bit of quote unquote of a lesser option, but I was thinking, Juventus is kind of loaded with strikers, either a guy like Mirko Vucinic or even a guy like Fernando Llorente. Juventus is striker heavy, and there's talk in Italy about Mario Balotelli possibly being moved on at AC Milan. Does Atletico pay for Balotelli? I don't know that Balotelli fits the bill with Atletico. I think Diego Simeone.
I don't think he does.
Yeah, I think Diego Simeone would probably have him for about 5 minutes, and he'd probably want to shoot him. Unfortunately,
This is it.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I don't think that Balotelli will end up at Juventus either. Because I think personally between you and me, Diego Simeone and Antonio Conte are kind of the same person. When you watch with their coaching styles, they're kind of the same person. So I don't see him going to Juventus. I don't see him going to Atletico. And then you have the old rehashes. I mean, does Fernando Torres return back to Spain and go there? I guess that's a possibility, but to me, Fernando Torres is a little bit of a waste of time at this point. You've got let's talk about in Monaco. You've got Dimitar Berbatov. Do they keep Berbatov at that point as well? I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody sitting out there that we're missing. Even an English striker. I don't know. What do you think? Like an Adam Lallana? Does Southampton let him go? I don't know.
I don't think someone like Lallana would leave as young as he is now. Maybe 1 or 2 more seasons possibly, but I just kind of get the feeling he's a bit. I don't know. I think he's a bit English based. I think he would find it a bit too scary. It's just the kind of read I get off on the kind of player he is. And possibly, maybe even like you said, maybe Chelsea try and throw Torres in some kind of swap plus money deal. Mm-hmm. It really depends on what's going on, and if we've missed anyone, Joe, like you said, I mean they've got world class scouts there. It's their job to be finding anyone and everyone that's scoring goals, and someone that's playing well. So
and that's the second part of this equation. You've got to remember this is an Atletico team that's won La Liga and they were runners up in the Champions League. They're coming into a lot of money. So I'm willing to bet that the name that they're looking at the striker position is higher up the food chain. Mario Mandzukic comes to mind because I think he had a little bit of falling out at Bayern. So that name kind of rings a bell with me, and also Bayern's going to bring in Lewandowski now. So, maybe the name is bigger. Maybe even like you go to Napoli and a Gonzalo Higuain, Gonzalo Higuain, that's a striker that would fit the bill with the style of play at Atletico. That's an interesting one.
Another player that I was thinking about, I mean, whether they'd get him to move on, is maybe someone like Ibrahimovic. I know PSG are trying to build there going forward, but surely with the amount of pull you've got, like you just said, winning La Liga, which is a lot more, should we say, in the front, Europe and globally, as a league on its own, and also getting to a Champions League final, you chuck a load of money at him, then would he want to go? If they let him speak, possibly. There's a lot of players, and I could see somebody like an Ibrahimovic playing in Spain. I would think he would score probably even more goals in Spain, because I do think the defences are slightly slower in Spain. The pace is slightly slower than the English league, but then the French league's quite slow as well. So it really depends for me what they want to do and what they want to do going forward. I'm sure Simeone wants to keep him. I know that there was a few statements saying that they're not intending to sell, they don't need to sell, and that's pretty obvious, like we said, with the money coming in. So there's no doubt, Joe, that on the shows coming forward, we're going to be talking more about this, and I'm sure there'll be rumours or transfers all over the place, especially in Spain. Yep. Just quickly going to talk about Barcelona and Real Madrid, Joe, before we leave, because we haven't even touched upon them. Right. Going forward and what they're going to do next season, obviously big injuries for both of them. I'm just going to list off a few players from both, just combine them quickly because we're going to run out of time otherwise. But, Bale was injured for a long time this season. Joe, Messi, Piqué, Puyol, Mascherano. These players definitely made a difference to this league as well. Take nothing away from Atletico, but with these injuries and the experience they've got in the past, and also, no doubt the amount of money they're going to have to spend coming the summer. I think both of those clubs are going to be they've disappointed their fans this year, and they're just going to chuck the checkbook at it, I would imagine. So you're going to see those coming into the market, and they're going to spend a bit of money as well. Maybe, it might only be a couple of players each, but you'd expect them to be big, headlining players. So we're going to see something there. So I think that's why I said this Spanish league, for me, transfer-wise, is probably going to be the one to watch. Mm-hmm. I think, I keep saying England's the league to watch, but I think transfer-wise, I do think Spain's going to be very active this year. And even if it is not like volume-wise, definitely what's the word I'm thinking of?
Quality.
Like big players-wise, like there's going to be the biggest transfers will come out of Spain for me.
Sure, quality, not quantity, I think is going to be the rule of the day. Yep.
Yeah, that's the word. Sorry, I have a bit of lack of sleep, but also, Joe Suarez has been linked to go to Spain as well. Like, there's a few rumours floating around. Mm-hmm. Whether he leaves Liverpool, does he after they chuck it away? You don't know. So I'm really looking forward to what happens to Spain.
I don't think Suarez is leaving at all. I honestly don't.
You don't think? Mm-mm. I just got a gut feeling, and I don't know. I tend to go with my gut a lot. So I don't know. But either way. I could see them making a bid for him. Whether he would go or not, maybe he doesn't go. Maybe he does stay there. I personally would stay, but I don't know. Is Suarez the kind of guy, if you improve his wages and chuck a load of money at him, does he go? Possibly.
Maybe. I think one of the other Spanish teams to watch, coming in next year, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Is going to be Sevilla. They're kind of in the middle of a rebuilding, and now they're going to come into some money with the Europa win that they had. So Ben, I think Sevilla might look to, and they have some nice pieces there as well. So it's going to be interesting, I think, to see what Sevilla does moving forward, to see if they can jump into this mix. Next year.
I do think outside of those three, for me, the only team. Sorry, just want to clear my throat. The only team, apart from that you would tend to speak about, really, is Sevilla, mm-hmm. and I'd like to see them do something going forward, and come on from that Europa League. Obviously. Now, going from next season, we touched upon it before, if you win the Europa League, you go into the Champions League. So there's a lot more to play for there now. And I can't personally see them soon breaking into this mix. But then I'm sure I would have said that about Atletico 2 or 3 seasons ago. So you never know what's going to happen. And this is why I did seriously consider this being a better league than England, because it's so much stronger. You used to just look at this league and go, Barcelona, Real Madrid, okay, yeah. It's boring, it's done. But now, not boring, but it's a 2-horse race. Now, you've got a really decent third team, a world-class third team that's been proven, and Sevilla coming on, they've won the Europa League. It's really strengthened, and this is why I'm going to say it now quickly. I'm tipping Spain for the World Cup. I just think that there's a lot going on there. But just wrapping it off. Although Barcelona and Real Madrid will be favourites for La Liga going into next season, absolutely no doubt they're going to have mountains of respect for Atletico, and Atletico going to be, whether they can do it again or not, they're going to be nipping at their heels all the way through. Sure. So we'll go to France, Joe, and you can start off with Ligue 1.
Yep, and I want to mention that I think, Ben, what you and I had planned to do next week was to talk about the teams that were relegated and the teams that are going to be promoted. So we're not going to bother bringing them up at the moment. We'll probably hit them up next week as one of our big topics. So moving over into Ligue 1, obviously, Ben, you and I had predicted that PSG would win, and of course we were right. It was pretty easy. But again, for me, PSG seemed to want to just give this away. Looking at their form in their last 6, 3 wins, 2 losses, and a draw, I mean, they really didn't do much to really solidify. Even though they had it wrapped up probably 6-7 weeks ago, they just didn't have it officially wrapped up. And it took until I believe it was that last loss, which was against, I'm just taking a look here, against Rennes, where they lost 2-1, where Monaco drew Guingamp 1-1, and it was the Monaco draw that really put them over the top. So kind of interesting, 6 weeks ago, Ben, we were talking about PSG as certainly one of the classes of Europe, and obviously they won the French Cup, they won Ligue 1, they've got a couple of trophies under their belt from this season, but just didn't have that killer instinct. And I'm wondering if Laurent Blanc, who I believe was renewed, if he's capable of taking this team over the hump. I mean, they were quarterfinalists, losing to Chelsea. Obviously, and part of that to me, Ben, was when you lose Ibrahimovic, it's so hard to replace him. I know you've got Cavani, I know you've got Lavezzi, you've got a great midfielder in Cabaye. You've done well. You've got Sirigu in goal, which is very, very good. But to me, it just seemed like there wasn't enough killer instinct out of this team moving forward to close out the season, unfortunately. What do you think?
It's basically word for word what I had wrote down, really. For me, this was a league that we expected PSG to win this league, but there's a big difference for being the best team in France and being a force in Europe. For me, I do think, apart from the last couple of years, France has been the weakest of the top European leagues. But you've got to remember, Joe, that David Luiz has just gone there, and he signed 50 million from Chelsea, which is actually a world record for a defender. Possibly overpaid a bit, but I think he really will fit into the way PSG play. David Luiz, I think he's man-made to play in France. I really do, and I think he's going to go into that, into that defence. And one of the things that I don't think he will get punished for as much in France as he did in England is his occasional lack of positional awareness. Just the burst and then just the not filling the hole that he left. And so yeah, they're going to be better going in that season. And you've got to remember they're going to be bringing in, like last season, quite a few players, and these players are going to take a little bit of time to gel.
Well, right now, Ben, their problem is they're under that penalty from financial fair play from FIFA. So I think the question is how much is FIFA going to let them do? What is FIFA going to let them bring onto the team? And now, obviously, they've spent 50 million on.
Yeah, that's just true. Yeah,
and the first story that I'd heard was they were going to only be allowed to sign one player up to 60 million in the transfer fee. That was it. And they couldn't take the 60 million and break it up into like 230 million players or 415 million players. It was up to 60 million and they're cut off. So, the talk of PSG for a while has been Paul Pogba from Juventus. For them to go out and get David Luiz really tells me that Juventus has really looked at Paul Pogba and said, no, you are not getting him. He's staying here for a long time. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with financial fair play and if PSG is going to be allowed to sign other players. That's going to be the real trick for them.
This is true. I must admit, I did skip over. I don't look at France as much as you do, Joe. But yeah, this is that's very interesting for me if they chose Luiz out of the players they needed. But I do think there's a lot of attacking players at PSG, and possibly a defender was the way to go. But I do think time is definitely going to be a very good healer for PSG. The fact that it's shown throughout the years, if you bring in a lot of players and try and mesh them together, or a lot of players together in one go, it doesn't happen straight away very often. So they're going to get better over time. I mean, they won this league, 9 points in the end. But I could definitely see them being better next season, even without any additions, and the season after, just because of the players gelling together. So we might see them do a bit better in Europe this year. I mean, they lost to a very good Chelsea team. But PSG are a force in Europe, and there will be next season again. For me, they're going to be once again in that top 8 for the Champions League, and they're going to win the French League again. And as long as they keep Ibrahimovic, which I think they will. But he had another awesome season, 26 goals, and they should cruise the French League again. And it was no surprises that they won it this season.
Yep. And moving forward, Monaco in second place. We just talked about him 2 minutes ago with Falcao, and Monaco may not have the financial ability moving forward to pick up new players. It's going to be interesting to see if Monaco does that fire sale like we just talked about and get rid of guys like Falcao and that sort of thing. My understanding is they've already gotten rid of Claudio Ranieri as their manager. So they're looking for a new manager. I mean, are we looking at a team that just went through a rebuilding process, looking to rebuild, moving? You got to remember, this team is moving into the Champions League. They qualified for Champions League, second place. They were still well within striking distance of PSG, even up to 6 or 7 weeks ago. Do we feel that Monaco maybe is going to fire sale a little too quickly on this one?
See, this for me, I don't know the exact the fair play that goes into France. I know that a lot of it's been changed in England now, but I'd assume that there's a regulation EU rules. But I would expect a few players to go. Yeah, I mean, if the owner, I know a few years ago at Chelsea it happened, and at Leeds even further back, where a lot of players have been brought in on big wages that were subsidised by the owner, and then as soon as the owner pulled the string, you have to fill the gap, and the only way to fill the gap is to sell players and to get wages lower. So you could see, quite a few players leave from there. Maybe Rodriguez, Moutinho, Abadal. If your wage bill is too high and you can't afford to pay it, then you have to get rid of players. And if you might see them do that, yeah. And they're gonna have to find a new manager as well. And then obviously you've got to fork out if you want a decent manager for decent wages over that contract as well. So I personally do think a few players are going to go, yeah. And
I think I'm sorry, Ben, please.
I was just going to say it's unfortunate for Monaco that this has happened behind the scenes, because for me, they brought in those players. I rate Ranieri. I think he's a good manager. I do think that he would have done well at Monaco. And time was what they needed. Another team that needed time. You can't, if you're going to bring in 4 or 5 players, you can't just expect your team to be better. On paper, yes, they are better, but it's not played on paper, it's played on grass. So you need to give these teams time. And this is what surprised me at like Manchester United and teams like this. If you're not going to give managers and players time, then how, what you're supposed to do in football? You're supposed to, instant success seems to be what people want, but it's not always realistic. But there is 1 plus point, well, 2 plus points, Joe. First one, you stated the fact they're going into the Champions League. And this, that's brilliant for them. And obviously they're going to, it should improve the fan base, but not only that, it's an experience for them as well. But one player that won't leave, well, I hope he doesn't leave because I've enjoyed watching him this season, is Kazawa, Joe. He came through the youth system, and I must admit at the beginning of the season, I was thinking, leaving who? I've never heard of this guy before, and I'm quite sure that some of the Monaco fans even probably, thought the same thing. But that little left back, he just, he seemed to just not be out of his depth at all. Thrown into the fray completely, never looked out of his depth. Looked like someone with much more experience than he did, and he completely thrived. He scored 5 goals. The late equaliser against Lorient, and Stade de Reims as well. And the guy can defend as well. So he's in the France under-21 squad now, and he's. I think somebody said that there's an outside bet that he can even make the World Cup squad for France, the first team, which is is crazy for me at his age. I would possibly not put him in just because, for me, you need to impress me for more than one season. But still, you can't take away what he's done. And I really would not be surprised if he's in that French team in Russia in 4 years' time.
Right, and like you said, Kurzawa, 21 years old. He made 28 appearances for Monaco this year, so certainly going to be somebody worth hanging out to. The other name that you had mentioned briefly that I think should really, if Monaco were looking to have a fire sale, the name I think they should hang on to is James Rodriguez. 22-year-old Colombian, 9 goals, 12 assists this year in 30 appearances for them. I mean, the kid in the midfield is an amazing talent. If you have to lose the likes of Falcao, I don't think they're going to end up losing Riviere, Emmanuel Riviere. I think he'll end up staying at Monaco right where he is. And, there's all the financial issues with Monaco being able to, there's some type of tax loophole where these players aren't paying they're not paying some type of tax or something like that. So they had to do something with the structure of the system just to allow because everybody would then run to Monaco because they could pay less and they would technically make more. I'm just looking through the French defenders on their list right now, and I think this might be a 30-man list. But their defenders right now are Debuchy, Sagna, Koscielny, Sacco, Varane, Mangala, Evra, and Digne from PSG. So they didn't select him for this list, Ben. moving forward. Unfortunately, because I agree with you 100%. The kid's a heck of a talent, Kurzawa. And he's gonna be great moving forward. Like I said, 28 appearances for Monaco this season with 5 goals and 3 assists. I mean, the kid's fantastic, and he's going to be one of these that's going to be up and coming. And if Monaco hold on to him, I think they'll do very well with him. So I see that, I see that as a benefit for them. So
I just hope that they can keep him, because these are the kind of players that you could see, one of the teams spotting him. I mean, it's hard to find good left backs now. I mean, it really is. So I wouldn't, maybe, if it comes to like January kind of time and he's playing well, is someone going to come in? Can they say no? It's all ifs and buts for me, and I wouldn't be that surprised if a bid did come in January if he did well. I personally think that players need to impress me for 2 seasons, but like I said, you don't see it as much nowadays.
Yeah, and again, it's going to be awfully difficult to replace somebody like him. So, just the only other thing that I think I wanted to mention was, and I think I'd mentioned it in a previous show, was the Sochaux Evian match. That was a match that basically loser goes home or loser goes to Ligue 2, and Evian 3-0 over Sochaux there. And the reason it just came up is because usually when I do the show, Ben, I keep beIN Sport on the television next to me, and they're showing the match highlights from Evian and Sochaux. So I thought it was kind of interesting that it would come on right at this time. But one more thing that I wanted to hit on, Ben, real quick was Lille. I've kind of chosen them as my team. I do like these 2 teams at the top, next to PSG and Monaco, Lille and Saint Etienne. Saint Etienne is so difficult to play at home. Lille, obviously, with their goaltender Vincent Anyema, they didn't score many goals this year. They only scored 46 in 38 matches, but only gave up 26. Only 3 worse than PSG themselves. The next best team was Monaco at 31. So certainly good defensively, certainly good in goal. Do you see either of these 2 teams? Let's say Monaco stands pat and hangs on to Falcao and maybe adds a piece here, a piece there. Do you see Lille or Saint Etienne with maybe 1 or 2 moves possibly jumping into that mix? Lille obviously having the Champions League playoff position, and Saint Etienne going to the Europa this year. But do you see either of these 2 teams maybe making some noise and maybe challenging next year?
If I'm honest, I'd probably not this year. Mm-hmm. But I do think that as far as the French league goes, it's one of the leagues for me that you wouldn't be surprised if a team did come through. Because like I said, I do think that once you go past those teams, there's not that much depth in the league. So it will only take 1 or 2 players, if the right ones come in, to make a difference. I mean, I can't see Lyon really doing that much, but can't say the word. It's a tongue twister. Saint Etienne, sorry. They really impressed me this year, actually. So I could see them maybe possibly making a run at it again like they did this year, but I can't see anybody breaking the top 2 again. Mm-hmm. But I do think it will be a 2-horse race for the 3rd spot again with Lille and Saint Etienne.
I agree. So let's so those are my closing thoughts on Ligue 1. Ben, why don't we go over to Bundesliga and we'll talk about them real quick?
Yep. Obviously we're gonna talk about Bayern for the most part, but it was kind of difficult really to know what to expect this season. I mean, where do you go from last season, which was a perfect treble winning campaign? Obviously Guardiola come in, and if I'm honest, I expected a repeat. Joe did as well. I said treble. I believe he said the same, Joe. We definitely expected them to win the Champions League. Sorry, we definitely expected them to win the Champions League and to do the double domestically. But maybe, with a new manager coming in, it's we're making the treble sound easy, Joe, but it's a lot harder to do in real life than it is on paper, I guess. Mm-hmm. But Bayern Munich, they got, quite close. They did as well as they could, semi-finals of the Champions League, and they did do the domestic double, obviously, and absolutely stormed the Bundesliga. I mean, winning the title in March. For me, I think maybe winning it that early, we did talk about it, Joe, would it affect the season? I do think it did affect the Champions League season. I really do. It kind of felt like the wheels maybe fell off a little bit, maybe slightly unmotivated. It felt like they kind of won the league, that They're already on the beach, with a towel and sun cream on. And that came to that Champions League game against Real Madrid. And that it wasn't the Bayern Munich team that I've been reporting on all season for me. And like I said, they looked unmotivated, a little bit lethargic. But they showed a real class, because after losing to Real Madrid in the Champions League, they bucked up, they got their ideas back, and Pep Guardiola refused to rest on his laurels. And they went into that DFB poker final against Borussia Dortmund and just took them to pieces. Pep Guardiola, for me, the style was something that really impressed me. I'm going to talk a little bit about the players in a minute, but the way he's put his own mark onto them. We spoke about it before, Joe. We said it. They look exactly like the Barcelona team of old, Joe. He didn't just, you could have gone to that team, well, anybody could have gone to that team, but he didn't go to that team and say, okay, last year. He changes the team, and if you look closely, Joe, I'm just trying to find exactly on my notes where it is. Oh, here we go. Usually Guardiola plays them like a passing Barcelona team, like they did against Man City when they beat them 3-1 earlier on in the Champions League, Joe. But then when they played Dortmund in the league, I've never seen such a contrasting change in style. They actually played counter-attack with long direct balls over the top and won 3-0, which was surprising for me. I expected to pass the ball around, but they didn't. And then once again in the cup final, after the Real Madrid lost in the semi-finals, he actually went to a three-man back line to completely stifle Dortmund, and Dortmund barely had a shot. So it shows to me that not only has Guardiola got a great team, he is tactically very astute. And I do just think that it was a case of head not quite on the ball in the Champions League against Real Madrid, because for me, I don't know whether you'd say man for man, it's quite close with Real Madrid, but I think tactically, with the manager they've got, they should be beating that Real Madrid team over two legs. Not by much. I'm not saying there's much in it. Possibly only a goal. But for me, this Bayern team is the best team in the world with this manager, together as a unit. And usually when you see them, Joe, they just don't make mistakes. They're just so efficient. What was your thought of them, Joe?
I thought the same thing. I thought this was a team that peaked a little too early. And like we said, they wrapped up the Bundesliga so early that it was almost like they had nothing to play for in the weekends, and all they were really looking forward to was playing during the week in the Champions League matches. But it's so hard to continue to play well when you're mentally just taking time off. Do you know what I mean, Ben? If you're not focused constantly, then you tend to lose a little bit of your edge, and I think that's what happened with this Bayern Munich team. And at the same time, when they did it, they also ran into a Real Madrid team that was really peaking. I mean, look at some of the goals Bale scored in the past, I'd say 8 weeks, Ben. I mean, just sheer world-class speed and determination when he scores them. We know what we're going to get out of Cristiano Ronaldo, whether he's injured or not. You know exactly what you're getting out of him. But when Bale adds that second piece to the puzzle, and you had Xabi Alonso playing well, then you really end up with a situation where they just overwhelmed a Munich team that couldn't mentally turn the switch back on. And I think that's what happened to them. Now keep in mind now that when they did win that German title, the Pokal title against Dortmund, at that point they'd kind of come to the realization, we actually should play. And keep in mind, I mean, Bayern Munich won 2 titles this year. They won that Pokal title. They also won the Bundesliga. This is not a bad squad, and I think between you and me, Ben, if gun to our head, if we had to pick a Champions League winner next year, I think we're still taking Bayern Munich. You know, they've got Lewandowski coming in now. There is talk that who were they going to? I think it was Mandzukic is going to be going. But they're obviously going to replace him with an excellent striker who's proven to score goals in the Bundesliga. So they've got Götze, they've got Robin Mueller. There's been talk of Toni Kroos possibly going to Arsenal. But we'll wait and see if that happens. Philip Lahm. I mean, just looking at the team.
Sorry, just wait a second about Kroos. Apparently, I read somewhere. on my Twitter feed, I'm actually belong to one of the gambling sites, and apparently last week at some point, Kroos went down to odds on to go to Manchester United. So,
see, no, and it's good, and that's gonna be, and you talk about this is the interesting thing for me is for Kroos to go to Man United. Either he's fallen out of favor with Pep Guardiola, or Man United is really throwing a ton of money at Bayern Munich, which amazes me because we talk about some of the richest clubs in the world, Ben. I mean, Man United and Bayern Munich come to mind, along with Real Madrid and Barcelona as probably the 4 richest clubs in all the world.
Of course.
Yeah. And these are the rich getting richer no matter what. I mean, a guy like Toni Kroos, he's no slouch, and he's going to go to Bayern Munich on a transfer. I mean, I don't think Munich's hurting for the money. Let's be honest.
No, I do think he's fell out of favour. I was going to talk a little bit about their player of the season as well, and the Bundesliga player of the season for me, Ian Robben. I don't understand how he can get older and get better. It seems to defy logic, personally. But 45 matches played, 21 goals, 17 assists. Joe, I mean, this shows that this is not just a guy that scores goal. He is everywhere, absolutely everywhere. But not only that, Joe, an interesting fact for you, this season he played 3,316 minutes worth of football, which is just worthy of note on his own, even if I hadn't gave the fact that he scored 21 goals and 17 assists, which for me, not only of someone that age, but just someone of that level to play. Bayern Munich are playing at the top level week in, week out, and he still played that amount. For me, it's brilliant. Some people, I must admit, doing a bit of reading this week, actually, just casual reading on the Bundesliga, and there's talk about, is Iron Robben too old? Should he still be playing at this level? Should he still be playing at Bayern? I disagree. This man should start every single game. If he's that old and he can play that many minutes that well, then why are you even talking about that?
Right.
It seems completely stupid to me. Completely stupid. Ryan Giggs has shown that if you work your backside off, shall we say, then you deserve to play every game.
Mm-hmm.
But just one thing quickly touching about older players, Joe, and where Bayern Munich can possibly improve next season. It sounds stupid really to say they can improve, but something that I did notice this year, Frank Ribery for me this season. I know he did have injuries, so is it an accurate representation of him? Probably not, but he was a very like a skeleton of himself. He, coming into the end of the season, he towed off the last 8 to 10 games. He towed away. I know you can say some of those games didn't matter, but they needed him in the Champions League, and he just didn't turn up.
No,
he really didn't turn up, and Bayern really needed him. So, if I'm Pep Guardiola, you've got to sit him down. You have to do something about this. If this Ribery starts at the beginning of next season the way he ended this season, he shouldn't start.
No, I agree.
He should not start for me.
Now let me ask you this. I mean, we just got done talking about France. Does he go to Monaco? I mean, does Monaco maybe instead of doing a fire sale turn around and take a guy like Frank Ribery and possibly Munich? Maybe Ribery just doesn't fit the style of Pep Guardiola with that whole tiki-taka type of play. Maybe he was cut out better for Jupankis and his style of play and style of coaching. That, I mean, you got to remember when he was, I can't remember now if he actually. I think he won Player of the Year, didn't he? He won the Ballon d'Or a couple of years ago. Ben, am I wrong, or was it Messi that won the Ballon d'Or a couple of years ago?
I think he was on the podium, wasn't he? But I don't think he
was a finalist. I do remember that.
He was definitely a finalist. Yeah, I don't think he did. I think he missed out, but we'll no doubt we'll be proven wrong if we are. SirBob ManCity at some point.
Yep.
But yeah, to me, I think you hit the nail on the head, Joe. I really do. I think that he is possibly not fitting into this team. I mean, I wouldn't write him off straight away because, like I said, I've already said twice on the show, I'm a firm believer in time, and I think you got to give him next season and see what happens.
Especially a player of his quality.
Of course, you can't. Form's temporary, class is permanent. It's an adage that runs true wherever you are. Mm-hmm. So you don't just chuck him out the team. You keep him in, you see what he does, and then if he doesn't do what you want him to do or what he should be doing, then like in any job, you should be pushed aside and somebody better put in your place. So that's definitely how I feel about it. Another person for me who's possibly getting a class, but is getting Schweinsteiger. They need to, for me, be looking into the market to replace him as well, because he's not going to be there forever. Possibly only a couple of seasons left in him, and he did play well in the final against Dortmund, Joe, and he actually played with a back injury, so you can't be on his case too much. But these old faithfuls, shall we say, Ribery, Schweinsteiger, it is the kind of when can the faithful and Guardiola say goodbye, because at some point they're going to have to. I'm not being cruel to anybody, but when you play at a level that is as high as Bayern Munich's, you need everybody to be peaking. You know what I mean?
I agree, and like you said, Schweinsteiger. Also, remember Schweinsteiger suffered a red card. I don't think he was available for the first leg against Real Madrid. If I remember correctly, he suffered in that previous leg. I think he had suffered a red card and I think was ineligible to play in that one leg. So, you always wonder. A guy like Schweinsteiger is very physical. At least and I've admired that from him. But you wonder if maybe, again, looking at Pep Guardiola and his style of play, he's not looking for the physical guy. Maybe a guy like Schweinsteiger, it's time for him to move on. I think you're right, Ben.
Yeah, it was just things that I've noticed this season. I mean, I must admit I spent a lot of time looking at and watching Bayern Munich, and for me, Ribery and not so much Schweinsteiger, but if I was the manager at Bayern Munich, those two would be the players that I'd be looking at, thinking, okay, going forward into the season after next, the 15-16 season and so forth, possibly even the end of next season or after January, do they need to be replaced? Do I need to bring in someone young, or do I need for them not to play as many minutes as they're playing this season? Right. So we'll see how that goes going forward. But we'll go back to them. I'm not going to end on a negative note for Bayern Munich, because I think that is unfair. That's what I said. I started off with saying, how can we make them better? It seems like if we do make them better, then we might as well just call it the Bayern Munich show. Mm-hmm. But for me, very impressive, very, very impressive, absolute world class. Still the best team in the world for me, and they'll want the treble next season to prove that they're the best team in the world, and to prove to us, Joe, that we're not talking rubbish and we know what we're talking about.
Right, I agree. Then, I think you see a few moves coming up for them. Obviously, they've already made the Lewandowski move. That's going to strengthen their ability to score goals, even though they were a plus 71 at the end of the season. They'd scored 94 goals in 34 matches. You almost feel like they don't need to score more goals, but certainly they're going to strengthen that ability with a guy like Lewandowski. And then for me, I think going into next year, Ben, I think we would both say that they're probably favorites to win the Champions League again. Not even knowing what kind of moves they plan on making. Yes.
Yeah. So I think if you was doing like an office poll or something like that, and someone said to you, you can pick any team out of the hat, we'll let you choose, you would take Bayern Munich. I think most people in the world would, and I think we touched upon it, Joe. I think they won the league too early. Had they have, stayed on the beach for 4 weeks at the beginning of the season, and then came in and gave everyone a 4-week head start, then they probably would have won the Champions League. So it's just ironic how things can work out, but we'll see how it goes forward, and I look forward to reporting on them next year, and seeing what happens. Lewandowski, like you said, they've got more people. They're going to come in, score more goals, and for me, they're going to win the league. They're going to win the double again, the domestic trophies, and they're going to definitely be there or thereabouts in the Champions League. The only reason they wouldn't win it is just, should we say, like the variance. I mean, in a Champions League match, it is only 2 legs. So if you have one bad game and you do make a couple of mistakes, every team in the Champions League is so good that maybe one other game isn't enough to bail yourself out. Mm-hmm. So this is the thing. This is why I was talking to my brother the other day about maybe, and I've actually spoke to you, Joe, and we've spoke about it, about having some kind of league format so he can take more of the luck out of it. But still, it's taken away from it. They're going to be there or thereabouts, Joe, and you pick them to win.
I agree. So,
do you want to just quickly touch on Wolfsburg and Hamburg? Just just a quick mention.
Yeah, and I just want to take a look here quickly at my notes here. Wolfsburg, obviously, VF Wolfsburg, for me, had a great season. They closed out with 4 wins in their last 6 matches, working their way into the Europa League position. I think Wolfsburg is going to be a team that we're going to probably want to worry about again next year. We talk about that team that might make some noise moving forward for next year, almost like a preview. I think Wolfsburg is going to be that team, Ben. These guys are led. You had Ivica Olic, leading the way in 14 goals for them in 28 appearances. They've got Kevin De Bruyne, who's another central midfielder who plays in Belgium. This Belgium team, we're going to talk about them next week. Just some very, very strong players. I think you're looking at a team that might make a little noise and get into that Champions League position next year. How about you, Ben?
I think they will make the Champions League next year. I really do. I think there's a combination of things that will happen for Wolfsburg to make it. First thing for me is Leverkusen. It's the first time in a while they fell from being the top 3 team, one of the top 3 in Germany. They used to be in that mix. You used to talk about Leverkusen as whether they were realistic title contenders or not. You knew that they were going to be there or thereabouts. This season they look very poor. Wolves in comparison, shall we say, and Wolfsburg only 1 point away from a playoff Champions League place. So I really do feel that Wolfsburg will be top 4, probably 4th, but they'll give themselves that chance, and I fancy them to go into the playoffs and get that last Champions League place. So they definitely made the most noise, and they're definitely the team to watch outside of Bayern Munich for me. They're a decent team to watch. And I think that possibly they'll even give Dortmund a run for their money. But I'll say Wolfsburg 3rd or 4th. But I think you'll see Munich Dortmund top 2.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking. Just wanted to take a look at one thing quickly, and I think I had one fact. But you know what? And somebody who's another player to watch, Ben, on Wolfsburg, that I just wanted to make sure we talked about was Luis Gustavo, who's the defensive midfielder for Wolfsburg. 4 goals, 2 assists, 29 appearances for them. Also, an option for the Brazilian team. So he's going to be a guy that we're going to want to watch in the summer at the World Cup, because obviously we're going to get a good taste of Brazil moving forward. And I think Luis Gustavo is another guy that really is a danger man for them.
Yeah, this is it. They've got good players coming forward, and now they've got a bit of confidence behind them as well. I could really see them making a little bit of noise in the German league, and I really do feel like we'll be talking about them in and around the mix. And like I said, I can't decide whether I think they'll be 4th or 3rd, but I do think that they'll get a Champions League playoff place, and I think you'll possibly see Leverkusen will be the team that will miss out.
Go on. I was going to say the last thing I know that we wanted to touch base on was Hamburg in the relegation playoff position. And a fact that I had heard, and for some reason I can't find it, but I had heard that Hamburg was the only team that had never been relegated from the Bundesliga, and they did survive. They were in the relegation playoff position, and had to play against Greuther Fürth for their relegation position, and they had beaten Greuther Fürth. Let's see here. I think it was a 1-1 draw, and I believe they went through on goals, if I remember correctly. I'm just scanning through the story here as well, but again, so Hamburg hangs on to that. This is a team this Hamburg team, didn't play very well, especially towards the end of the season. I just want to go look at their run of form at the end. Yeah, they lost 5 of their last 6 matches to close out the season. Managed to survive a relegation playoff. Ben, do you think we're talking about them surviving it again next year, or do you think that this was one and done is what it comes down to, and they'll kind of be the Braunschweig of the division moving forward next year?
I think this is more of a kind of a freakish season for me. I don't think they're going to make any noise in the German league, but I think they'll be okay next season. They'll avoid relegation and the playoff. Maybe like 14th, something around there.
Okay, all right. So it'll be interesting to see if they can survive that or not. So let's move on to Serie A, Ben.
Yeah.
All right. So, and we'll try to speed it up because it's amazing how much time we're spending on these leagues. So, but quickly, obviously Juventus, Ben and I, we both had them chosen as the champions of the Serie A. Pretty easy one. They close out with at least 6 wins to close the season. 102 points, Ben. It's a record for Serie A. They only lost 2 matches. That equals Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich also only lost 2 matches. The difference is Juve plays 38 matches and Bayern plays 34. So 4 more opportunities to win, and even though they had 4 more opportunities to win, same amount of draws and same amount of losses as Bayern Munich. And to me, Ben, this Juve season is record-setting, but it's disappointing. A team of this quality, to me, should have done better in the Europa League, in the Champions League. I think, going out in the group stages of the Champions League is really an issue. It's certainly you wouldn't expect it from a team of this quality, but they did do that, and really have nothing to show other than a Serie A title. I mean, they didn't even play in the Coppa Italia final. So this is a team really with 1 trophy for a team that we would call record-setting is just, it's amazing to me. Ben, what are your thoughts on Juve's season?
I think in the league they're very, very impressive this year. The few times that I've actually had a chance to catch them, because we don't get much Italian league focus in England. I don't know why it is. We used to have Goal Italia. I remember growing up as a kid, waking up on a Sunday morning and watching a show. It had a brilliant intro where they used to just say the word goal for about 20 seconds and it would go straight into Serie A. But they were very impressive, like you said, 102 points, 2 losses, won the league by 17 points. So dominant. They looked like the Juventus of old in the league. The team that I grew up watching winning the Champions League, just, someone would say to you, who are the best team in the world? And you'd say Juventus without thinking. But you're right, they did, the Cups didn't go well, Champions League, Europa. But I do think the Champions League you can semi-write off, because I do think that this Serie A really, really meant something to Juventus this year, and they really, really needed this. So the European leagues, I think from a neutral point of view, I can put them aside this season, because I do think next season, going forward, you're going to see this Juventus team. Not only will they win Serie A, but they will make some dents in the Cups. And I do think whether they can push into this top 8 in the Champions League, I would expect them to be there. And for me, they're at this kind of PSG level. For me, they're outside the top 4, but you would definitely have them as dark horses for the Champions League. And this is what I think, and this is what I expect next season. I expect to see them in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. And on their day, they can beat anybody. So you wouldn't write them off. Pulling off an upset, making some headlines, and they've got some really, really world-class players there. I mean, like I said, and it's been put into the intro, Joe, the coup of Tevez, I think, is a great, great signing. Like you said, Pogba, Vidal, even Buffon's old and a cat. It's just they are a world-class team, and they can beat anybody.
I agree.
I was going to ask you a few questions, Joe. Obviously, you're a Juventus fan, so you can answer them better than anybody. Mm-hmm. If you could be the man in charge of all the transfers, what positions do you think you need to strengthen, and who do you think Juventus can get financially for the fee and for the wages?
Well, I think they need to replace eventually Andrea Pirlo. One thing with Pirlo, and I think we've got another 2 years out of Pirlo. But I don't think it's going to be much more than that. He seemed a little slower, let's say, but the key with Andrea Pirlo is his ability to know where to be positioned on the field to play slower. Okay, so he knows the legs don't work that way anymore. So what does he do? He makes sure he's in a position that he can still play there. So I think that down the food chain they'll need to replace him, and they'll need to consider it. And if they can find that person now, the more the merrier. But I
think sorry, Joe, just to interrupt you. He reminds me of a bit of like Paul Scholes at Man United, and how much they missed him when he left.
Exactly. But Paul Scholes, you thought just on his pace that he was done, professionally. But then when he was actually gone, you were like, wow, I can't believe, we miss him. Even as slow as he was, we miss him. So I think they might want to start considering Pirlo because of what he's shown for pace, and especially they're going to have, Pirlo's going to play a grueling schedule. He's going to play the World Cup in Brazil. He's going to get about a month off, and he's going to jump back into the Serie A. And not only that, but they're going to run into Champions League play. So he's going to end up with a busy schedule this year, and I don't know that he's going to be able to physically handle it. So they're going to need to find somebody to play on the pitch for him, give him a break here or a break there, and allow his legs to heal. So he's one. I think the other part is going to be getting a better striker. I think going world class. And if they have the money to pull off the coup, maybe a guy like Falcao, who might be out on the for Monaco, maybe he's the guy you want to look at. And one thing I want to mention that we're talking about it here. We had mentioned earlier about Fernando Llorente going from Juventus to possibly Atletico Madrid if the price was right. Tancredi Palmieri reported 28 minutes ago on Twitter that according to Catalan Sport, they're going to publish this in tomorrow's Catalan Sport, Llorente would be ready to lower his salary to be signed by a Spanish team. It's just not Atletico. It said that he would be signed by Barcelona. So, Llorente had a fantastic season. I didn't look up his goal stats, which I'll look up. Just give me 1 second. He did have a fantastic season and really was kind of a diamond in the rough. I don't think they expected quite so much out of Llorente to the point where he put Vucinic on the bench. So I think he was a pleasant surprise. He scored 16 goals for Juve in 29 appearances, 16 goals, 5 assists. So only to be outdone by Carlos Tevez' 19 goals in 30 matches. So I think I think they'll probably want to see if they can pick up a world-class striker, if you know what I mean. And Tevez is a great striker. There are probably a dozen out there that are way better than him. And think about it, Carlos Tevez didn't even make the Argentinian national team. So there are strikers out there. I mean, not saying that they did it with smoke and mirrors, but Juve in general has such a nice mix of players that I think that as long as they can get their heads out of their butts when it comes time to compete in Europe, I don't think they need to replace much. I think, if anything, it's going to be a world-class striker.
Yep.
Now, the other thing that you want to worry about as a Juventus, I think next year moving forward, I think they're going to win the Serie A again myself as well. However, I don't think we saw this Roma team perform like it did. I don't think we saw that coming. And I heard somebody, I think it was Phil Shane on beIN Sports, say that he really likened this Roma team to next year's Atletico. Roma's going to end up in the Champions League, in the coming year. They play that scrappy style, very, very talented team, Ben. And I just want to go and call up their roster just quickly, just so I can refresh my memory with all the different players. Obviously got rid of American Michael Bradley, but added Raja Nangolan from Belgium. And I think that's going to be a common theme for us. I think this Roma team is going to be poised to really make some serious noise. Miralem Pjanic from Bosnia-Herzegovina. Obviously, they've got Daniele De Rossi, who's only 30 years old. He seems like he's 40. Strootman's going to be coming back off of an ACL injury that he suffered. Gervinho was a pleasant surprise, Ben, right? I mean, look at Gervinho, the way he played for Arsenal last year or the year before, and the way he played for Roma this year. I mean, talk about a big-time player. He was unbelievable. What did you think of Gervinho's play this year, Ben?
He was. He really surprised me. I must admit, when he played at Arsenal and I got to see a lot of him, he was very hit and miss. I do think he's a big confidence player. I do. I need to see another good season out of him, if I'm honest, just to prove it, because he had a really good season at Arsenal and then he came back the next year, and I don't know. Maybe he's just more suited to the Italian league, and I do think he probably is. And there's no reason why he can't go on next season and do well. I do agree that this is a really talented Roma team.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna put some points on the ball, but I don't think they're going to close the gap to Juventus. I think that they're for me 4 or 5 players shy of being a real threat to Juventus. I don't think you'll see Juventus get caught. But this Roma team, like you said, they're scrappy and they work for each other, and it's been proven that you do that. If you work for each other, you improve the team as a whole, by like 10-15%, which gives you a chance of beating any team anywhere. So over a game they can do it, but over a season I don't think they can.
Now, I think for me this Roma side is going to be a danger in the Champions League. I think they're going to be the side that one can be beaten, but two, nobody really wants to play them. Because they are pretty dynamic in their play. I think actually Roma's issue is going to be in goaltending. Morgan DeSantis is 37 years old, and I think they're going to need to look to replace him with something moving forward to really have a chance. Just at DeSantis at 38, I don't think is going to be capable of playing game in and game out for them. I think you're going to need to relegate him to the bench. I think you'll need to use him, every couple of games, maybe use him in the Serie A, and you come up with a bigger name. You're gonna have the money coming in because you're going to the Champions League, so you need to take that money and move it somewhere to pick up a quality goaltender of some sorts. I think that's going to be the key for Roma themselves. They score enough goals. They scored 72 goals in 38 matches, only outdone by Napoli and Juventus. So I think their issue is going to be shore up the goaltending, and maybe add a world class striker if they can. Maybe add a bigger striker, but I think that'll be about it. I don't think they'll have to do much more now. Just the last thing that I want to talk about in Italy, we just said about adding a striker at Roma. Maybe a guy like the team that I want to talk about next, which is AC Milan. Mario.
Just quickly before we go on there, Joe.
Sure.
Champions League. How well do you think Juventus will do? Just quickly, if you had.
Oh, Juventus.
Yeah.
I think this squad as constructed should get to the semifinal.
Okay.
Really
we're going to AC Milan.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic place. Now, do they advance past? I don't know. I don't think so. When we start talking about the teams that they'll face, they're going to face a Chelsea squad. They're going to face a Man City. They're going to face a Real Madrid. They're going to potentially face a Liverpool, a Barcelona, Bayern Munich. All the usual suspects. A PSG. I think it's going to be difficult for them to advance past that semifinal stage, but I think that realistically they should advance to the semifinals.
Okay.
All right. So the other team I want to talk about, AC Milan. Mario Balotelli, the AC Milan for the first time and I forget how many years, but it's many years, did not qualify for any European competitions. They fell 1 point short of qualifying for the Europa League. The last position was taken by Parma on the last day. And Ben, even up until the last about 20 minutes or so in their match, they still had an opportunity to possibly advance into Europa, but didn't make it. And I know, Ben, you and I have talked about Milan, and we've also talked about kind of their mirror image this year in Manchester United. There's talk now about bringing up Pippo Inzaghi to replace Clarence Seedorf, although I thought Clarence Seedorf did a wonderful job with this team. This team was in disarray when they took over for Allegri, and I thought Seedorf did a great job. He got them refocused, kind of got the team back on the same page, and they really made a run at it. You got to remember this AC Milan team was mired in like 11th or 12th place when Seedorf took over, and I mean, yeah, they only got him to 7th place, but geez, 1 point out of a European position. I mean, I think he did a heck of a job, and I think it's a little too early to pull the plug on Seedorf. What did you think of Seedorf's job overall, Ben?
I think he did a really good job. I agree with you 100%. I mean, before he came in, they looked disarray. They wasn't concentrating. They wasn't really playing as a team. A really bad start, and then as soon as Seedorf took over, they were more focused and they closed it within a point. I think I'm not sure how big a gap he closed to get there, but I would guess it's somewhere between 8 to 10 points. If you added that onto their point total now, they're comfortably in Europa and they're outside shots of Champions League, and I think that's what you'll see next season.
Yep.
And I would keep Seedorf, give him a little bit of money to spend, and they'll have an outside shot at Champions League.
Do you get rid of Balotelli?
Would I? No, I wouldn't. I think Balotelli. I just at this moment in time, I don't think AC Milan are going to have enough pull to get somebody because Balotelli, when he's on, if you get the right manager to really get under him, and I think Seedorf can do it. If you get the right manager, he is a very, very good player, and he's probably the best finisher that they can afford at the moment, really, that would want to go to an AC Milan team that didn't even make Europe.
Ben, for me, he's one of the top finishers in the world. Ibrahimovic, Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, they're better than him. I'm not putting him in the same class, but he is certainly a step below. I think he's a better finisher than Falcao. I think he's a better finisher than Diego Costa personally. But the problem with Balotelli is he's such a head case that you need to rein him in, and if you can't rein him in, he's worthless.
Yeah.
And I think that Seedorf is a guy who, for some reason, sees eye to eye with him, and I think getting rid of Seedorf is a mistake for them. And if they can keep Seedorf, they should keep Balotelli. And I think, like you said, they should easily get Europa, if not Champions League, next year, despite the quality up top at Juventus, Roma, and Napoli. Even Fiorentina, I think they can certainly be the better of the two Milan teams. It's just a matter of them kind of getting things together, which I think a guy like Seedorf is able to do for them.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. I think outside shots of Champions League is my fault if they keep Seedorf and Balotelli.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So last thing I want to mention is, and I'm doing this for my brother, we're both, our family comes from Sicily, and it's sad to see Catania get relegated. Catania is really only about an hour to an hour and a half from where my father was born, and so it's sad to see that. But there's a bittersweet ending. Is Palermo will be coming up from the Serie B and kind of replace Catania, so there'll still be a Sicilian presence in the Serie A come next year. So I just wanted to mention that. So Ben, let's go over to England. Let's talk about the Premier League, which is probably one of the most exciting leagues we covered all year.
Yeah, no, you're quite happy to take that, Joe, because I'm like I said, next season I'm gonna try and get at least a 30-second section of updating what Blackburn did last year, because did at the weekend even, because there's a chance we make playoffs next year, and I don't know, I just want to talk about my own football team a little bit.
Yeah, no, I want to actually add that as a mandatory section. So I seriously, starting next year, we will talk Blackburn.
I literally only want 30 seconds. It's just no one else will listen to me.
No, I'll listen.
Anyway, yeah, I know you will. And now this is it. See, I get myself on a radio show, and now they have to listen.
That's right.
Anyway, if we talk about the Premier League, obviously there's loads to talk about in the Premier League. I've got 5 things I do want to talk about. So we're going to start quickly with Liverpool, Joe, and them chucking it away. This is the main point for me. Absolutely lost their nerve. Last couple of games for me, obviously at home to Chelsea, where at the time, Joe, you would have said a draw would have conceivably been enough globally. This is what people were thinking for them to probably win the Premier League. But then they lose 2-0 at home to Chelsea, and then they go to Crystal Palace, get 3-0 up, and draw 3-3. This, to me, is completely down to the mind, or down to nerves and lack of experience. I think from the team and from the manager, I think it's unfair to say Brendan Rodgers has done a bad job, because he hasn't. But then you've got to remember that Brendan Rodgers hasn't got the experience at this level. So you have to let him get experience. And I think if you'd have said to Liverpool at the beginning of the season, would you take second? They would have bit your hand off for second. So you can't. I know they must feel like absolute crap, but you cannot change the foundation of this Liverpool team. If they do that, they're going to go down the pan. They need to keep the foundation, because Man United have proved that you need a structure before you can move forward. You can't just keep changing the base and hope that things work. And this is the ethos that I've been trying to portray to people. But yeah, anyway, going back to the fact they threw it away. Just nerves, lack of experience for me. Got 2 young players in the squad, Sterling, these kind of play, Henderson, that they're going to learn from this as well. And, Brendan Rodgers has done a great job. If they take this through into next season, and they use it and they go forward. You're going to see Chelsea and City strengthen, obviously, Liverpool are still going to be, for me, unless they do something drastic in the transfer market, they're still going to be the third strongest squad in the Premier League. But as long as they keep Suarez, they're going to be a serious threat going into next season, because they're going to have this experience from this year and knowing that they can push them this far. What did you think, Joe? Do you think they chucked it away? Do you think they got a chance next season? What's your view?
Well, I think it's two things. Did they chuck it away? That they did. They certainly did a little bit. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about them losing to a Chelsea team that, and I know you have a stat on this, so I'm not going to mention it, but a quality Chelsea team, and then you look at the following week, drawing to Crystal Palace. Now they did chuck it away against Crystal Palace. I agree with you. Going up 3-0 and not being able to close it out is on the team. But let's look at that Crystal Palace team, Ben. They finished in 11th place in the league. Certainly a quality side. Tony Pulis just knows how to win. He amazes me. He can take any team.
The 5 things the Crystal Palace thing was actually one of the 5 things I did want to talk a bit about.
All right. So I won't say much, but he's a fantastic manager.
Of course.
But so yeah, they did chuck it away a little bit, but let's look at who they chucked it away to. They chucked it away to Man City, that closed it out with 5 straight victories. I mean, that's, what do you expect? That Man City team has been there all season. And talk about a team that's dealt with some injuries. They've dealt with some injuries. They really didn't have Aguero consistently for the last 8 to 10 weeks of the season. When you think about it, Ben, going back to January is when Aguero really started with his missing time because of the hamstring. Yeah,
I think. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think the main point was the fact that they wasn't behind trying to catch; they was in front trying to just not be caught.
Right. Like
they didn't. Apart from the Chelsea game, if they can take something from that Chelsea game at home, then you would expect them to win the league.
I agree, and from that standpoint, they certainly did chuck it away. But my point is, they didn't chuck it away to terrible squads.
Oh no, of course no. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm just saying that this was the equivalent for me of a runner that's not quite as quick as somebody else, but being in the lead going into the final 10 meters. You would expect that person to be good enough and professional enough.
And they had a 2-week stumble. And they had a 2-week stumble in that race.
Yep, that's what it was. But at the same time, Joe, very surprised. I'm very surprised Liverpool finished second. We didn't see this.
No, but let's be honest. Not only did we not see it, nobody saw it. You think about it. This was, and I don't know. You might have these stats better than me. But Liverpool, I can't imagine was even favored to finish in a Champions League position, and there they are, second place, only 2 points out from the title. I mean, you can't expect. By all counts, this should be considered a successful, fantastic season for Liverpool. I don't think you can cut it any other way. At best, Liverpool might have been considered for the Europa League, but that's about it. And look what they did. They did way better than that. So,
I think I would have had Liverpool as fourth last year, but that would have been it. I didn't see them getting anywhere near the top 3, but they did that and they proved it, and it is a successful season. And like I said, I firmly believe there'll be a serious threat next season.
I agree. I agree as well, and I think the key to that is going to be holding on to Suarez. I think they need to.
Agree.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So, how about let's talk about Crystal Palace, since I kind of spilled the beans there a little bit. I thought for them, fantastic season coming up. Again, adding Tony Pulis as their manager, wonderful job. I can't say enough about them, Ben. How about you?
Yeah, for me, Tony Pulis came in, obviously the old Stoke manager. He, for me, is a man-motivated magician. I mean, he took over in November. Crystal Palace are on 7 points, and he's got no money to spend. They didn't spend anything in the window. They barely spent anything in the summer. They've got no budget. They've got a small stadium. They're surrounded by Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham. They've got a small fan base. Crystal Palace is actually only down the road from me. It's like a 45-minute drive. They've got barely anything. Like I said, 7 points, and then they go on to finish 12 points clear of the relegation zone. And this is a championship team for me, man for man, that sits 11th in the Premier League. This is absolutely ridiculous how this has happened. Because this team, man for man, is a championship team for me. It really is. A good, very good championship team. And I'm not saying the worst team from the Premier League last year. Man for man, it's not. Possibly third bottom, something like that. But he's taken them and put them 12 points clear. 11. They're a mid-table Premier League team purely because of Tony Pulis. And I'm saying this on air, and if you've got a problem with it, you can come and find me. Tony Pulis is the manager of the season for me.
I would actually agree with you. I might want to give the nod to Brendan Rodgers a little bit, but I certainly would put him in the top 3, no doubt about it. Ben, I'm just looking at their line. 13 wins, 6 draws, 19 losses. It's amazing that they lose so many games. They lost half their games and still managed to finish mid-table. Well,
that was it. They'd played 13 or 14 games and only had 7 points when he came in.
Right. And then when he came in, he turned them around completely. So, certainly an amazing job by Tony Pulis. You can't put the success on anybody other than him, I think.
Yeah, he's shown that he's a world-class manager, and when he was at Stoke, he had them playing long ball. And the funny thing about Stoke was they never really had. They've got some okay players now, but they never had a good team. Stoke, they were a championship team as well. Really, for me, maybe slightly better, deserved to be in the Premier League, but he had them boxing above their weight every single week because he'd keep them strong, compact, and they'd play long ball with a big striker. A little bit like how Blackburn used to play, ironically, when they was in the Premier League. And this is how you turn over and pick up points. You don't play people at a game that they can beat you at. You make them play the game that you're best at.
Right. And
this is what he does. He makes it compact, hard to break down, and then you use the strength, which was, big, strong players that are tall. And this is what he's done at Crystal Palace. He's just got big, strong strikers up front, real solid midfield, real solid defence that keep tight, and they play as a unit and they all work for each other because of what he does on the training ground. So that, for me, don't get me wrong, Brendan Rodgers, he's like I said, he for me is my number 2. I would put him as number 2.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this Liverpool team closing the gap between 4th and 2nd is amazing, but closing the gap for me between 3rd bottom and 11th
is huge.
Is once you've already been given a handicap coming in November, so he's playing off of probably a 4-point handicap anyway, and then he finishes 12 points clear. So for me, he's opened up 16 points. I just think that to do that takes a very, very strong set of skills as a manager.
Sure. Let's put it this way: if he has those 4 points back in his pocket, he's even with Newcastle. Newcastle's certainly, I would say, above mid-table type squad as they're constructed. Yep. And he finishes dead even with Newcastle. So just an amazing job. I wanted to mention quickly, Ben, and this is actually more of a question than anything else because I don't know if we're planning on talking Arsenal at all. But the FA Cup final, obviously Arsenal beating Hull. My understanding is that Hull picks up a Europa position as the runner-up because Arsenal already qualified.
Yes.
Okay, that amazes me that Hull, who is 16th in the Premier League, and just looking at it is just 4 points outside the relegation zone, and they're going to Europa.
Well, they go into the qualifying. Yeah. This is the magic of the Premier League. A few years ago, actually against Arsenal as well, actually ironically, but they Arsenal lost 2-1 to Birmingham in the FA Cup final, and Birmingham that year got relegated, went into the Championship, and went into Europa League. So this is what makes football amazing.
Wigan did it last year.
Pardon?
Wigan did it last year, beating Man City in the FA Cup, and then getting relegated as well. So
it just shows you it's this is why we love football. This is why we sit here, and this is why I'm half asleep sitting here doing a football show. It's just because it's this is the kind of thing that makes football electric, and makes it fun.
Agreed.
So we just want to talk quickly about a few things. We're just going to touch on Sunderland, just a brief sentence. Gus Poyet, another magic job. Rock bottom month before the end of the season. So you've got 6-7 games left. Absolutely rock bottom. Come the end of the season, they're 5 points clear. Gus Poyet, we talked about him. Old Brighton manager, we did touch upon him at the beginning of the season. I did have a little bit about him because I know a little bit about him. And once again, really good man motivator. You could see it shone through. He came in, he brought the team together, and if you're rock bottom coming into that last month and you can get yourself so far out that you're not even included in it in the last day, then you've done brilliant. And he'll keep them up next year, and Tony Pulis will keep Palace up next year, and we won't be talking about Sunderland or Palace going down next year. And that's usually my predictions are pretty good, so you can take that from me.
I agree.
Well, just quickly, Joe, just briefly going on Man. If I don't say anything about Man City, then Sir Bob's going to be not too happy.
No.
Obviously, Man City winning the Premier League. We're trying to get through it all. We've got a long show. I know I've been I've been off the boil a bit, but everyone knows I like to talk too much anyway. But we'll talk about Man City quickly, Joe. And this is Man City winning the league, like you said, not at their best at all. They made a lot of mistakes this season for me. At the beginning of the season, we was talking about them, Joe. Away from home, awful form. First 10, 15 games away from home, you would not expect to repeat of that next season. Secondly, Joe Hart, what an awful start to the season he had. So you wouldn't expect that to happen either. So you would probably give them a couple more points because of that, because those mistakes definitely had a bearing on the points total. Mm-hmm. And lastly, the third point I want to make about it is big injuries for long times to Aguero and Silva, and they still won the league. So my question to you, Joe, is all those things together. Obviously, not everything's going to run perfect from next season. You can't expect that. But those things that I've just mentioned, and if they don't happen next year, or not all of them happen next year, what do you think the difference that's going to make? I'll tell you what I think afterwards, but what kind of a difference do you think they'll make?
Well, I think if all the same issues happen again, and you lose Aguero and you lose David Silva, and you they lost Yaya Toure for a little bit, and the mental mistakes from Joe Hart that saw him to the bench, and Costel Pantilimon making the pitch for an extended period of time, if I remember right. I think if that happens again next year, or something within that setup of scenarios happens again, I don't think City wins the title. And there's the only reason I think City doesn't win the title in that scenario next year is because your Liverpool squad is going to be better, going to be another year of experience for Brendan Rodgers. So I think I don't think they'll just chuck it up like they did this year. And I also think, just a team that we were talking about earlier in the show, you're going to see a lot more out of Chelsea. You're going to see improvements out of Chelsea. Chelsea is not going to stand pat. And I understand they lost David Luiz. David Luiz, to me, was a little bit more of a defensive liability than a help. Yeah. So, what
do you think? Because I obviously I don't think all this. I don't think you'll see this bad away form like that. Mm-hmm. I don't think you'll see a bad Joe Hart, and unless they're really unlucky, I don't think you'll see injuries as bad as this season. So for me, I think Manchester City don't need to improve at all, even if they didn't. I mean, I do think they still need to buy one or two players, but even if they didn't, and you repeated this season, they finished this season 8 points clear.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting for City to see what they've got in Alvaro Negredo. He was kind of demoted to the bench. He was demoted from the bench to the bench about midway through the season in favor of Edin Dzeko, and it's going to be interesting to see if he returns to form, because you remember, Ben, when he came out at the beginning of the season, he was on fire. He really made you forget about everybody from Tevez to Balotelli to all those guys that they'd had in the past. He just made you forget about them, and it was interesting to see him fall from grace so quickly that it's going to be interesting to see if he can return to that form. Otherwise, I think City needs to go out and get a striker. They needed somebody to work with Aguero up top, somebody of some quality to hold that. Maybe for laughs, Ben. Maybe they go get Suarez.
I personally think is a little harsh on Negredo. Really, I think I still rate Negredo. I think he's a good striker.
I do too.
You have to remember that even in the best teams, your third striker is never going to be as good as your first two strikers because it's logically impossible. But he for me is still a decent third choice striker, and unless he sees like a ridiculous deal or Suarez does become available, for me, a striker is. I don't think they really do need a new striker, not at least in the summer. I personally would see how Negredo does and maybe reevaluate it come January.
Okay, I think that usually though that my concern with doing something like that is, and I agree. I think Negredo needs another shake. But my concern is that when you go to that winter transfer window, there's really not a ton of quality that you can kind of pick up there. And also, Ben, the worry is finding the right mix of players. Do you know what I mean? Finding that person that will supplement your team and what you're trying to do. So that would be my concern with doing a winter transfer for a big striker. But I agree. I think Negredo needs another shot. I think he needs some consistent time. And
I think as well, you got to remember they got Dzeko there as well. So for me, I don't think that's the area they need to improve. Not at the moment. I don't really think they need to improve that much. Mm-hmm. I do think they got pretty unlucky with injuries, if I'm honest.
I agree. The amount of players and the quality of players that they had going down.
But then saying that, like you said, I mean, if you said to me, would I swap Negredo for Suarez? Of course. I mean, that's to me silly. And if you've got that money and you can spend that money, then why would you not have that? But then if you have Suarez, and Aguero playing up front, then is it worth the rest of the Premier League playing? I don't really think it is it?
No. I was going to say, I think we'd have to fire you if you ever said Negredo over Suarez at this point. So
yeah, this is it. I mean, if you said to me, if Suarez became available, should they buy him? Hell's yeah. I mean, you do, you do. Of course you do. I mean, it makes it even more fun to watch. But I do think that they don't need to be like if I was the scouts there, or if I was the manager deciding like buying a new striker would be down my list of players to be looking for. Okay. You know what I mean? I would have my eyes open. More for me, centre back possibly. Yep. Maybe full back, but I don't think that would be. I'd be more looking in the other positions. But still, like I said, this is a Man City team with loads and loads of money and is gelling well. So I don't think you need to go out and get that many players. Just one or two. Just keep the structure there.
I agree. The pieces are minor.
Yeah, of course. Okay, we'll just quickly talk about Chelsea, Joe. We can't not talk about Chelsea. I know we're trying to get through quick.
I know.
This is a stat for anyone listening. Chelsea actually took 6 points from Manchester City and from Liverpool this year. Beat them home and away. And the old adage is, if you can beat the teams around you, you'll finish above the teams around you. Mm-hmm. And if you can take 6 points from these, Joe, so basically they had a 6 points head start on Manchester City and on Liverpool, and they still finish third. This to me has to be a really, really disappointing season for Chelsea. Really disappointing. They fell away and they've made me look stupid on the radio. I just what do you think, Joe? Anyway?
Well, first of all, I want to pat myself on the back because I had Man City winning this one. So
yep, well done, Joe. Well done.
I'll take credit for that. But I agree. Oh yeah, I had Man City. I took it. Remember at the beginning of the year, I took it because of SirBob. So. But again, I agree.
That's why I was congratulating you.
I agree. I think, and the only thing I can think of is maybe Mourinho in his first year, just kind of figuring out what he has in front of him. But, they did so well in Champions League that I don't know. It seems to me like you're supposed to beat the teams below you. Do you know what I mean, Ben? You're supposed to beat the teams that are not as good as you. So when that doesn't happen, you have to blame either the players and their mental focus, or you have to blame the coach for not preparing them properly. and I think for this one, I think it's a little bit of both. I think, Mourinho not having a quality striker. I mean, let's talk about it. Demba Ba, very good. Certainly, there are at least 5 or 6 strikers in the Premier League that are certainly better than him. Samuel Eto'o, very good. Certainly 5 or 6 strikers out there that are better than him. I think, and we talk about Chelsea moving forward. What do they need to do in the transfer window? They need a striker. They need somebody who is of top class, a top class finisher. And we talked about Diego Costa, and you've got to remember Stamford Bridge has a lot of money there. I think between the fact that Stamford Bridge has a lot of money, I think you're going to see, like you said, we talked earlier. I think Diego Costa is a very distinct possibility of going to Chelsea and being that answer, Ben. I mean, do you think a player like Diego Costa fits in with what they're trying to do at Chelsea?
I do. Okay. I do. I think he would I think he would go in well just because the Chelsea midfield is very, very creative. And the reason they didn't win the league is because what you touched on. They have not got a world-class striker. Mm-hmm. And this, maybe world-class is a bit too harsh, but you need the pinnacle. If you're going to play at this level and you're going to win arguably one of the hardest leagues in the world, you need someone that's going to just score a bunch of goals. Because if you're going to play just one up top, you need that guy. He has to score so many goals, and they didn't. And if I was Jose Mourinho, I would bring Lukaku back, buy Costa, start Costa, and have Lukaku and give him minutes from the bench. That's what I would do.
I see personally. If with Mourinho, I would actually look to try and play both of them. I would try to put them both up top at the same time. To me, the lone striker is a difficult position because it puts so much pressure on that one person to produce goals. When you play 2 strikers up top, and especially 2 of the quality of Costa and Lukaku, that allows them to play off of each other and give themselves a little more space. Then you've got a guy like Oscar and Eden Hazard behind them, feeding them. I personally, Ben, I think I would play both.
I think the fact that they play 4-2-3-1 has been a component of what they like to play there, but I do think it's definitely another option to play 4-4-2. The only thing that would worry me about playing 4-4-2 is, once again, like we just spoke about with Manchester City, then you need a decent third choice and a mediocre fourth choice, so they have to go out and buy another striker if they do that. You see what I mean? Well, if they play them both, they have to go and buy a third striker for me.
Well, I would think Samuel Eto'o's gone. I don't think he's sticking around.
Yeah. I don't think Torres is good enough to be that third position. I think Negredo is better than Torres, and we were saying, do you keep Negredo?
Oh no, I certainly agree, but I think Demba Ba is good enough to be that third position.
Do you think Demba Ba is better than Negredo?
I think Negredo's a little bit better, but I think Negredo's also going to be the second option at Man City, where Demba Ba is going to be the third option at Chelsea. I think.
True, but then if you look at this Man City team, the depth up front, because the injuries they got this year, they had Aguero out at one point and Negredo out at the same point. Mm-hmm. They say you need 4 strikers, but this is a component of having 2 backups for 2 positions. Mm-hmm. So you kind of, I guess your fourth choice striker doesn't need to be that bad. Can Demba Ba be that third striker? Yeah, he can, but would he want to be?
That's the question.
I don't know. And is he good enough in that first striker? I personally, I don't think he is now. Mm-hmm. I think they would have to go and buy someone. But it's all ifs and buts, and I understand what you're saying, Joe, and that might be the way for them to go forward. I don't know whether it's just something that's ingrained into them there to play 4-2-3-1. Do you think it's just something that Mourinho likes to do, or do you think as soon as they go there, Abramovich is on their back and say play 4-2-3-1, or where do you think it comes from?
Well, I think it's probably something that Mourinho is probably a little more comfortable with, but at the same time, I'm wondering if Mourinho was tied into it because of the quality of strikers, where he doesn't have a second striker that would be that top quality. Even his first striker. So Mourinho says, you know what, we'll play 4-2-3-1. And we'll play to the strength of our team, which is our midfield. You've got to remember that they've super high quality midfield, and I think that's probably what Mourinho was thinking was my midfield is stronger than any other component that I have on the field, even better than my back 4. So I think I'm gonna, go to bed at night with my midfield and see if my midfield will win me games. And sure enough, they did that. I mean, we talk about Eden Hazard as one of the top players in the world now. And
yeah,
the reason he is that way.
This is it as well, though. I think if they bring in another striker, they've got so many world-class midfielders. It really depends, doesn't it? Really, it depends on what they think. I think both could work. Play Eden Hazard and Oscar, and you've got two wingers in there. And for me, that it's such a good midfield. I do think it's better than Man City's midfield if they can get somebody to really score the goals. But can Costa do that on his own? He's used to playing up front with two. I don't know. Maybe not. Would both of them together score more goals? Possibly. But this is the thing. This is where Mourinho earns his money.
Right.
He has to work this out in training. I mean, we can. For me, I'm not saying one is necessarily better than the other. And this is the thing, Joe. We just wouldn't know unless you was at that training ground and I took one team aside, then you took them aside, and then we looked at them and compared notes. It's just.
I agree. I think also for Chelsea's sake and for Mourinho's sake, as we're talking about it this way, they need to make the Lukaku and Diego Costa decisions quickly. Now,
of course, they do.
Now,
I 100% agree.
And I don't think they're going to make the Diego Costa decision until after the World Cup, just because of the timing of it all. When you're moving from, to a different league and the distraction of the World Cup, I don't think that either party wants that. But I think the Lukaku thing, they could make that move now and say, you know what, we're bringing you back, and you're going to be with us. And we own you anyway, so there are no discussions, there's no contract negotiations, there's no buyout clauses, there's none of that stuff. It's just, we're just taking him back, we're no longer loaning him, and that's it. So I think the Lukaku decision they should make quickly. But obviously the Costa thing is going to take a little more time. But I think that's where they need to go is bring both of those players in. I think that if Chelsea does that, I think we really have a serious discussion about Man City being unseated as the champion.
I think if that happens, then it's going to be a very, very, very close two-horse race, and I think it will be a two-horse race. I can't see Liverpool closing that gap. I really cannot.
I agree.
I think this was Liverpool's chance, and they blew it.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a good season, but I think this within like a 5-year period definitely was their best chance.
Yeah. Before we move on, I want to send a shout out to Troy. He's not in the chat tonight. He's having some internet trouble, but he's been listening to the show without being in the chat. So just thanks for listening, Troy, and we really
thanks
appreciate
for listening,
it.
mate.
So. Ben, let's do the Benfica thing really, really quick, because obviously we're starting to run short on time, and we still have the Champions League, the World Cup, and MLS, as well as SirBob's ManCity Corner. We have a ton of stuff to go over. So, but the one thing I wanted to talk about was Benfica. We talked about them when they were going into that Europa League final. We said that. Or at least let's rewind it. Let's go to the semifinals. We said that the winner of the Benfica-Juventus match would be the Europa League champion. We really, really felt that they were the two best teams in the league going into the final four teams there. And of course we were wrong, or at least I was wrong, and Sevilla won it. But I just wanted to mention that Benfica was able to be the first side to win a domestic treble in Portugal this year. They claimed their 33rd league title, their 5th league cup, and their 25th Portuguese cup. And the first time they won all three in the same year. So congratulations to Benfica. Just wanted to mention that. Ben, we don't talk enough about Portugal. I mean, really, because we just run out of time. I think if we had to add another league or two, I think we would add the Eredivisie at in the Netherlands, and we would add Benfica in the Portuguese, or at least we would add the Portuguese league. What do you think of Benfica winning the domestic treble?
For me, it's brilliant. They've always been. The thing about the Portuguese league is, I think it's fell behind because of how strong the other leagues are. I mean, you talk about the teams, and it used to be French was, don't even talk about France, but now with Monaco spending money, PSG spending money, they just, it doesn't get as much media attention as it does. But still, Benfica have shown that there's some real quality in Portugal, and that they do deserve a mention. Slightly off topic, but I was looking at an attendance list, Joe, for the top ones in Europe. This kind of touches upon which is the most interesting league. Mm-hmm. And after the top 4 leagues, Joe, it actually goes to the Championship before it goes to Portugal.
Wow.
On average attendances. So it shows you how how popular football is in Britain, in England, shall we say, and B, how strong the leagues are. So this is why, so I mean, if we was doing it on attendances and technically we should we should go to the Championship, but then obviously we're weighted more towards England. But it's brilliant for Benfica. They've got a decent team, and like I said, the Portuguese league is no slouch. I mean, Porto's won the Champions League. This is still quite a strong league, but it's kind of being left behind because all the big players, they're looking at the big glitzy Real Madrids and Barcelonas now. You've got Bayern Munich coming through and PSG and Monaco. There's so many big teams now. The Champions League, you used to be able to look at it and go, okay, 4 teams can win it. Now you look at it and you think there's 10. And it's brilliant for football, but it's harder for smaller teams to break it. And I'm not saying Benfica are a small team by any mound, but in comparison to the teams that we talk about week in, week out, they are. So it's really, really good to see them. They've done this, and I'm, sorry, Joe, but I'm glad that they've won the Europa League because it's kind of it's shown us a bit of diversion and there's still some strength outside of the top teams in Europe.
All right, I'm just thinking that this Benfica team is literally 1 goal away from winning 4 titles this season. So it's amazing, and that kind of capability where they're really in position to win four championships. It's something else, and we're certainly going to see Benfica be around for a long time to come. They always have been, but
of course,
yeah. So it's going to be interesting to kind of keep an eye on them moving forward in the Champions League next year as well. So let's head over to the speaking of the Champions League. Heck of a match this weekend, Ben. We had the Madrid derby. I guess you might as well say, right? But Atleti and Real Madrid in playing at the Stadium of Light in Portugal at Benfica's home stadium to decide the Champions League. Ben, I'm imagining you got a chance to see it. I saw a stat that this is one of the highest watched matches in the world. More people watch this globally than watch the Super Bowl, so it's something that is watched by everyone. So I'm assuming you saw it. I'd like your thoughts on it.
I actually only got to see it from the 65th minute because I was out with my girlfriend trying to get back, and there was a problem on the train. So I was looking at it on my phone, and then I made my girlfriend watch the end of it. But it was amazing. And luckily, I only missed 1 goal. A massive mistake, but we'll talk about it. I'll run through the stats of the game quickly before we even talk about it. Real Madrid, after the end of extra time, because obviously it ended up 4-1 to Real Madrid after extra time, but the stats, 20 shots for Real Madrid, 9 on target and 63%, and Atletico 37%, 11 shots and 4 on target. Before we start, Joe, I just want to say that we both did predict a Real win, so there's not too much of a surprise there. I will say, and Joe knows that I've been looking forward to this moment all night, but I actually did predict 1-1 in normal time and Real to win in extra time. And also, just to say that every single week I've made a correct score prediction. I've got 1 right since we started doing it. So,
and one thing I just want to add, Ben, I want to add, Ben, that not only did you say 1-1 and then Real Madrid in extra time, the key was that you said Real Madrid in extra time. You didn't say it Real Madrid in penalties or anything like that. You said it in extra time, and I think that was equally as impressive as the 1-1 itself. So
yeah, like I said, I was talking to my brother about it the other day because he likes to hear about the show, but obviously he has to get up early for work, so he doesn't really get to listen to it. But he does listen to it occasionally on YouTube. And like I said to him before the game, I said 1-1 and Real in extra time, and he said, "Oh, did you bet on it?" And I said, "No." And he went, "You idiot! It would have been about 25-1." And I was like, "Yeah, it probably would have been." So, and like I said, that like every single week I've got 1 right, and I think I worked it out with my girlfriend the other day that if I'd have put £1 on all my correct scores, I'd have made like £35 this year or something, or £40. So I don't know, maybe I should, like I said, I did say earlier on in the season, Joe, I should start up a little tipster website or something, a side business. But we'll talk about the game. As far as the game goes, Gareth Bale for me with the game-changing goal for me, helping Real Madrid to fulfill the dream, and after the disappointment in the domestic league, securing a memorable 10th Champions League triumph with an extra time win, could have really been much more dramatic, Joe. And after Bale, he a woeful first half miss. I mean, I didn't get to see it, Joe. I imagine you did. How bad was the miss, Joe?
I didn't see the miss, unfortunately, because I was also away with my daughters. They had danced that same time, so for the I did catch.
I did read that it was a real sitter that he missed, and this to me, like, you think that in games this big, you just, when they come, you take your chances, Joe. So it must have been inside his head, but fair play to him to put it to the back of his head and to be able to do that, because I do think, for anyone that didn't know, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid were 1-0 up after. It's got to go down as a mistake from Puyol. Sorry, not a mistake from Puyol. Sorry, terrible heartburn. A straight from Courtois, even not Courtois. Who was planning goal on his day? Was it Casillas that started?
Yes, it was Casillas. It was Casillas.
Yeah, a mistake from Casillas. Sorry, comes out to claim a ball that is no right to come and get, and it comes off Puyol's head and goes over his head and loops in. It's a mistake that you wouldn't even see in the Championship, Joe. But it was ironic that it happened in the Champions League, and it was the first thing that my granddad said to me when I walked through the door at 60 minutes. He was like, "Oh, I can't believe the Champions League's going to be finished on a mistake." Mm-hmm. But then Puyol coming back, class act. Some players would have dropped their head, like I said about Bale, but he didn't. And that equaliser in normal time, and when it went to extra time, my brother looked at me and he was like, he almost as if I was there, fiddling with the strings so that I'd be right. But it was just made for TV, Joe. It was really made for TV. It was the 90th minute, 91st minute. I can't remember the exact minute. It was just coming up to injury time, I believe, or just the first minute of injury time. Yep. And it went in, Joe, and I've never seen a crowd erupt like that. It was as if they'd had such a bad year and all the emotion spilled over, and you could see people crying, and then there was Atletico Madrid fans crying, and it was just, it was a sight to be seen. Anyone that hasn't seen the game, if you watch the equalising goal and you look into the crowd. But up until that point, Joe, it looked like Atletico were going to see it out. After the mix-up, Atletico Madrid defended really, really well. Really well. Juan Fran looked absolutely amazing. They must have been devastated, Joe, when that goal goes in. Can you imagine the winds coming out your sails like that?
Oh, you could see it physically on them. And even when Bale scored the goal, because I did get to see from that point on. To me, the fire that was in Atletico, moving through the second half, right up to the Sergio Ramos goal. I mean, they played such a strong game, only to be outdone by Sergio Ramos there and I think it was in that first injury minute. But with Bale just, it looked like they, fair play to Bale. He scored a great goal. But it almost looked like they were starting to run out of gas, Atletico was. And it was really much more obvious on the Marcelo goal. When Marcelo picked up that ball, I mean, he had nobody in front of him, and you could just see that the Atletico players were they were deflated. They were exhausted, they were deflated. They had given everything that they had, and they just, it was almost like they were resigned to the fact that Real Madrid was the better team on the day. And and unfortunately, in the end, they were. But I think it was a much closer margin than that. It just looked to me like they were deflated. The Cristiano penalty kick, I could have done without. But it was what it was at that point. You know what I mean? It was almost like,
of course,
not saying that it wasn't a penalty.
This is what I said to you at the beginning of the year. Don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against Cristiano Ronaldo at all. Mm-hmm. But just to me, I just think Atletico, they're a little bit more likable as a team than Real Madrid. And I must admit, my heart went out to them. Like, when I did research with it, and one of the things I wrote down in my notes was 4-1 was really, really harsh. 4-1. Sorry, got odds on the brain. 4-1 to Atletico. They didn't deserve to lose like that. That to me, a one goal margin would have been a fair shout. And you hit it on the head, Joe. You really did. It's something I wrote down. Once it went into extra time, and you saw Juan Fran trying to lead the defence, but they just couldn't. They'd worked so hard for so long to keep Raul out that when they equalised, the legs went, and he was allowed to move in and out, and then once the Bale goal goes in, that's it. And it sucked for me really, because I love penalties and I really wanted this to go to penalties and I wanted to be wrong, but I'm sicko really. But I mean, I guess real football fans want to see it done in football, in a football mode rather than penalty kicks. But it was down to legs for me. This Atletico Madrid just couldn't keep going. 110 minutes was the absolute end for them. But like you said, the Real Madrid penalty, it really just added extra gloss to the scoreline, Joe. But that it was Ancelotti's third European Cup as a manager, so you got to go out to him. He gets the job done. I don't think he got enough time at Chelsea. And he actually joins Liverpool's Bob Paisley in the record books for 3 European Cups. So,
that's correct.
Give that to him.
I think one of the other things, just going back on the stats, I think one of the other things that really hurt Atletico in this match, and obviously you don't know that they're going to go to extra time, but losing Diego Costa in the 9th minute, unfortunately, it was almost like an experiment that they shouldn't have done. They probably should have kept him on the bench and brought in, maybe started Adrian, and then if you feel like you needed a goal in the last 10 minutes, because you're only going to get 10-15 minutes out of Costa, then give him a shot. But if you need to, but I think it was just unfortunate. I think that really hampers a team when you have to replace somebody in the 9th minute, and then you go to extra time like that. I think it really hurts them.
I do believe it as well. It's not only that. I think because obviously the manager makes a decision and the players don't, and if you're part of a team, as a goalkeeper, even from the back, Joe, when I look forward, if the first choice striker for our team is fit, or I think he's playing, instantly you're more confident. Mm-hmm. Because as a team you want to win before the game, at half time, every single moment of the game you're working for each other. So if they're seeing Costa starting, they're thinking that he can play, and then when he goes off after 9 minutes, not only did it make a difference physically to the team, but I think it did mentally. Okay. It must have. To see your striker go off the pitch against one of the best teams in the world in Real Madrid, it made a difference. So I completely agree with you. They shouldn't have started him, because not only have you put the hopes up of the fans, not only have you risked him as well to do a bad injury to himself and destroy yourself for the start of next season, but it's made a mental difference for me, and and it ended up making a difference to the game. One thing I was going to talk about, Joe, other than this, was the Diego Simeone incident, which you must have seen as well. We absolutely lost his rag. Did you see it, Joe?
I saw it, but because I was watching it in a theater, I couldn't. I had no volume, I had no sound, and I haven't had a chance to go back. I still have the game recorded on my DVR, and I haven't had a chance to go back and watch it to actually see what set that off or what happened. But man, I thought there was just going to be a fight on the field. So tell me a little bit more about it, because I'm intrigued. I want to know more about this.
Yeah, this was. I saw this full sound. I was in my living room with my girlfriend and my nan and my granddad and my mum and my brothers. There was about 10 of us watching the game. Like I said, I got to watch it from the 65th, 70th minute. And apparently Diego Simeone, there was a quote that I've managed to find anyway. They were so close to victory. He said he lost it in the closing stages, and he actually confronted Varane at the end of it, because apparently Varane kicked the ball at Atletico's bench after I think the score was 2-1, or they just scored the third goal, or in between them. I can't remember the exact minute because it went a bit hectic when the goals went in. But because he kicks the ball at the bench in celebration, Simeone jumps off the bench and just comes flying out at him because he thought it was an over celebration of the goal, and obviously they just had the stuff and kicked out of him, and he lost his rag. But to me, I remember my mum saying, even my mum was in the room, she said at the time, "Oh, he looks like he's going to come out and kill the guy," and he did kind of remind me of a gangster. He's the only person in the whole field that looks so suave in a black suit and black trousers, black shoes, with a black tie, comes sprinting off of the bench. You can't write the storyline, and I thought he was going to hit him before anyone got there, in fairness. But one thing this shows, Joe, just the passion that comes through. Simeone, he's proved that he's done. He's done this. He's another great manager we've been talking about this year. But he's standing up for his players. You can't control emotion. Anyone that listens to football, watches football in any way, knows that it gets hold of you as a sport, and mentally it gets hold of you. So you've got such an emotional attachment to your football team that when things happen, you can't control it. Sometimes I've been sat in my living room whilst anything can be happening. Someone could be doing something else in the corner of the room. I'm watching a Blackburn game. I'm sure, Joe, you with Juventus or whoever your team is, SirBob Manchester City, and it builds up and builds up and builds up, and your team can frustrate you. And if they score and it lets out that emotion from you, it could be a scream or a fist pump or whatever it is. I've burnt skin off my knee sliding across the floor. You can't control it. And this is just exactly what's happened. Sometimes I swear at the screen, and I'm not, I'm quite a timid person in general. So and this is what's happened to him. He's came off the pitch and he's protecting his players, and they don't deserve that. But at the same time, you can't blame Varane there. I don't blame him, because that was probably the emotion coming out. So I just think it was something, spare at the moment, and but it was just good TV, really. But like I said, it was harsh. I think we both agree it was harsh, Joe. Atletico didn't deserve that. The players didn't deserve that. And the defence of Atletico certainly did not deserve that. But what we can take out of this is that Real Madrid's still a global force. And Atletico Madrid, even without arguably their best player, definitely their best player playing outfield, they're a team to fear worldwide, Joe. They're a team that can cause anyone trouble.
Absolutely. They're certainly a force to be reckoned with. And like we said earlier in the show, going to be interesting to see what they do moving forward, because you're looking at a team that can certainly get back there. It's just going to be a matter of what kind of moves are they able to make, or what kind of moves are they able to avoid that will allow them to hang on to what they have to go ahead and move forward. So, but it was certainly they certainly didn't deserve 4-1. Like you said, 2-1, maybe 3-1, but they certainly did not deserve 4-1. I agree.
Okay, should we go over and get the World Cup done then, Joe?
Yeah, let's.
We're just we're going to try and go through this a bit briefly, because we've got to get 4 teams, and we've got to get to the Man City corner as well.
Yeah, and
I'll let you lead off with Portugal, Joe,
sure.
And then I'll go to Germany, just because I've got to get a bit of water on my throat.
All right, go ahead. Let me get to Portugal. Portugal, according to William Hill, is 33-1. And first of all, let me start this off by saying we're going to be talking about the group of in my opinion, is one of the groups of death, and we're going to save the United States to last, because I've got a lot to say, of course, being in the United States.
Sure.
But the Portuguese team is 33-1 to win the World Cup, according to William Hill. And I just want to go and fire up their squad here. Obviously, when we talk about Portugal, we really talk about one guy. We talk about Cristiano Ronaldo, who we just got done talking about with the Champions League. Top players in the world. He's certainly going to be the focal point for anything Portugal wants to do to survive and advance in this competition. And I'm just going to go take a look here at the rest of the team here. And really, like we've said before, there's really not a whole ton of quality here. They do have Bruno Alves, who plays for Fenerbahce. They've got Fabio Contrao, who plays for Madrid. Neto plays for Zenit St. Petersburg. Pepe is another one, is another person. So the back line is famous, but Contrao is a good defender. I would say Pepe is a little bit more of an attacking defender. And Bruno Alves, same thing. In the midfield, we've got João Moutinho, who we just talked about in Monaco, is going to hold down the midfield for them as well. But after that, there's really not a whole heck of a lot in the midfield, and this is probably their biggest weakness. But up front, up top, they are certainly strong with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Helder Postigo, who plays at Lazio. We've got 2 very, very good quality forwards, along with Nani, who plays at Man United. So we've got a team that is certainly solid. But being in the group of death, you're really going to have an issue with that. Now, this team is currently ranked third in the FIFA rankings. I think they've got them rated a little too high. They've only had 5 appearances in the World Cup, but of course, you've got the Cristiano factor playing into that ranking. And just wanted to move. And Ben, yes, what you said, I'll go ahead and do that. So moving forward, their schedule looks like this. On June 16th, they're going to open against Germany, and I want to stress at the fact that all of these games, especially in a group of death like Group G, are of the utmost importance. There's no one game that you can sit there and say, oh, that game is much better, or this game, or they can choose to slack on this game. All of these games are must wins. You have to come away with some type of result from any of these games. So June 16th, Portugal opens their World Cup endeavor against Germany. That game is going to be played in Salvador. And then on the 22nd of June, they will face the United States in Manaus. And a lot is being made about this particular game because Manaus has been known to be very, very heavy, tropical rainforest, very humid, difficult climate to play in. And a lot of people, at least in the United States, are looking at this game and saying, this is a potential winnable game for the United States because the U.S. in qualifying, when they qualify through CONCACAF, play in these types of scenarios. They play in Costa Rica where it's hot and rainforesty. They play in Honduras where it's hot and rainforesty. They play at altitude in Mexico where it's very hot as well. So and they've also played in the rainforest in Panama. So they're used to that type of environment, and people are looking at this match as a quote-unquote potential upset where the U.S. can actually pull away at least a tie, if not better, because the Portuguese team just might not be used to playing in this type of condition. Then Portugal will close out their first round against Ghana in Brasilia on the 26th of June. So. And then, Ben, one thing I want to mention, and I don't know if we mentioned it before, we're going to do Group H next week, and then the week after, June 9th, we are going to do we're going to make all our predictions. I also want to mention that if you go to ESPN in their fantasy section, if you search Low Limit Football for their bracket predictor for the World Cup, we are going to have a bracket predictor for the World Cup, and we'll kind of follow it along as we cover the World Cup as well. So that's my quick little preview of Portugal, Ben. Which team do you want to take us to next?
We'll go to Germany. I must admit, I did just do a brief bit of this because we're quite quick on time and we're trying to go for 4 teams. But nevertheless, Germany, ranked number 2 team in the world, and they're going to be a massive force. I mean, in qualifying, they finished 8 points clear. They won 9 games, drew only 1. I think I checked on Odds Checker as well before I came in here to see what they believe they're going to be going into Brazil. Obviously, in a South American climate, obviously you'd expect them to lean towards the South American teams, which they had with Argentina. Sorry. With Argentina and Brazil. So, but they're third favourites, so they're saying that they think they're going to do the best out of the European teams. And it's quite a standard to see. They're a very efficient team, the German team. That a bit like the Bayern Munich team, they play well, they play good as a unit. They're always there or thereabouts. Very, very hard team to beat. And Germany, for me, in this group, they are the standout team in this group for me. I think that of the other 3 teams, you could possibly pick those in any order, like Joe said. It's, for me, a kind of a group of death, but I would expect Germany to win this, and I would expect Germany to go far, if not win the tournament. As far as players, I still think that the star player is Ozil. I know he was a bit on and off this year at Arsenal, but I do really think that when he gets going, he's a real devastating talent, and he really can change games, and he's going to get to show that in the World Cup. This is his chance to really prove that he had an off season at Arsenal, but he's world class, and I'm sure that he'll go to South America, and I'd be surprised if he didn't make some kind of difference. but they've got a good team throughout, really. I mean, a multitude of talent. Just going to name a few players for you, just at the top of my tongue, obviously, Neuer and Royce. I do want to talk a little bit about Lamjo. I mean, not only has he proved that he can be one of the best left backs or right backs in the world. He had to fill in at defensive midfield as well for Bayern Munich this year, so it shows he's a very versatile player as well. So this is a player that can push forward, can slip into defensive midfield as well, can go either flank, can attack and can defend as well. World class, best fullback in the world for me because of his versatility. So obviously they've got a very, very strong team. Major force for me, and I don't think either of us would be that surprised really, Joe, if they went on and won the World Cup.
I agree. I mean, unfortunately, the German team is so good, and not for nothing. Not only are they so good, but Germany in general tends to do well in the world tournaments, such as the World Cup. They always tend to play well. Team always seems to make the semifinals, if not better. I don't know how you can pick against them at all. And for me, without giving away too much, I do think that that Germany will win the group here. I don't see how that. I don't see how that doesn't happen. I think the battle is really here for second place between the three teams that are involved. But Ben, I got to tell you, because of this group, it would surprise me, but it wouldn't shock me if Germany doesn't make it out of this group. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I do think there's a chance. I do think there's a chance, but I just think they're just so efficient. That's the word that I always think when I think of Germany. Just not just at football, at life, but at football, it's a great definition. They just seem to get it done all the time. Like, you look at some of the countries, Portugal comes to mind, England definitely comes to mind, is consistency, and Germany, they're just so consistent. So I personally would be very surprised if they don't come out of this group. I don't know exactly what the odds are of them not qualifying for the group, but I would say pretty long. But then it is only 3 games, so you can see some upsets. But I think they're going to have too much for Ghana and the States. And Portugal as well, but really for me, I only really see Portugal having a chance of taking something from them. I just think this German team, I kind of feel like that they feel that they've got something to prove, and they want to knock Spain off, topple them off, because obviously in the Euros it's been Spain the last few years as well, and with the World Cup, and I think they're going to go there and they're really going to try and prove something. So I'm going to say Germany number 1 for me, and Portugal, but United States are going to be very close, and I really wouldn't be surprised if it was United States instead of Portugal in second.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So, Ben, do you want to do Ghana third, or do you want me to hit the United States right now?
No, I'll do Ghana, and then you can go off on the United States, because I would if it was England, and obviously we run on a bit about the England attack Italy game, and obviously that's going to be one that we're going to really talk about. England Italy. I know there's a bit of deep felt meaning there. Yep. As far as Ghana go, 200 to 1 to win the World Cup, but I do think that's a little long, really, same as United States, really, because the Ghana and United States are both decent teams. But yeah, 200 to 1 with William Hill. We take the odds anyway. As far as the qualification goes, out of the group, they won 5 and lost 1, only conceded 3 goals during those 6 games. They finished the group 4 points clear, and then they went into the playoff, which they got drawn against Egypt, and they won the first leg 6-1 and lost the second leg 2-1, but they went through 7-3 on aggregate in the playoffs. Kasai Pires, the manager, he's done quite well with Ghana, really. I do think they have slightly improved since he's been there, and they are definitely one of the better African teams for me. Whenever the African Cup of Nations comes around, their name's always there or thereabouts, so they're not a pushover. They're a big strong team, and they've got some decent players. SEN comes to mind for me. He would stand out as a star player, ex-Chelsea player, really good on the ball and really strong. Won't be a pushover in this group, and this to me is the only group where, although I'd say Ghana is the worst team in the group, it's really not the worst team by any kind of a margin, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, just looking at the roster now, obviously their goaltending's a little suspect, but looking at their defensive line, Daniel Opari, who plays for Standard Liège, is an excellent player. Jonathan Mensah, who plays at Evian, is another one who's excellent as well. But their strength, this team's strength, is really in their midfield and forwards. You had mentioned Michael Essien already, but Quado Asamoah from Juventus is in there. Sully Montari from AC Milan is in that group. Just looking through quickly, Andre Ayew from Marseille is there. And Aqua from is another one, but Asamoah Gyan at forward, Kevin Prince Boateng. Just a lot of class in the midfield and forward on this team, and they play a very fast style. They're gonna be a joy to watch no matter what. And again, this is.
I think it's experience, Joe. I think that's what it is. A lot of the I don't want to say they're a smaller nation, but these like outsiders that tend to be smaller nations, Ghana are the most experienced of them for me.
Oh, sure, absolutely, and think about what Ghana did.
Like you just said, is European experience all over the field.
Absolutely, and think about what they did to a decent Egypt side. To move
forward.
Destroyed them. It wasn't. I watched the African qualifying, earlier in the year, and it wasn't even close, Ben. I mean, Ghana was class above them. There was nothing this Egyptian side could do to even stay on the same pitch with them. Now, I think. It's unfortunate because the Egyptian side was very, very good, and probably if they draw somebody like Cameroon or draw even somebody like Nigeria, might actually push their way through. And I think if they draw Algeria, they definitely push through. But this Ghana team or the Ivory Coast team were the two squads they probably didn't want to see, and of course they got Ghana, who for me might actually be the class of Africa.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
So let's move on to land of the free, home of the brave, and that would be the United States. The United States national team is 150-1, and I think that number is probably on the money. I don't think it's too long or too short. And again, this is the kind of team that if they can escape this group, may make some noise and surprise a few people moving forward. So just to give you a quick breakdown, they've made 9 appearances in the World Cup. Keep in mind now, Portugal, who we just talked about earlier, has only made 5 appearances in the World Cup. So USA's been to 4 more tournaments than the Portuguese side. Now, granted, Portugal has to qualify out of Europe, and we're seeing teams like the Ukraine and Sweden left off the out of the tournament. That are high quality sides, but the U.S. still has to go through Mexico and some of the South American or Central American sides, and they've made 9 appearances. They're currently ranked 14th in the world, and the big controversy, and I'm going to call it controversy because it's been the talk for a good 4 days now, is the omission of Landon Donovan from the U.S. national team, and it intrigues me the entire omission. I think it was just this time. I think people in the United States are upset and disappointed at the fact that basically Landon is forced out of international football here at this point. Everyone expected Landon to see Landon at this last World Cup. I don't think they expected more out of Landon than that. I think moving forward they probably expected him to be out. But I think the omission by Jurgen Klinsmann is there are multiple factors in making this decision, okay? And I just want to go through them for one at a time. First of all, Klinsmann and Donovan didn't see eye to eye. I think Klinsmann still held a grudge towards Donovan that when Klinsmann came on as the coach of the national team, it coincided with the same time that Donovan went on his sabbatical, Ben. I don't know if you know about this. He left soccer for literally 6 months and just went to like Cambodia or something and tried to like reconnect with life in general. But it was at a time when they're trying to qualify for the World Cup. They're running through the qualification process, and Klinsmann would like to have relied on somebody who is experienced and seen as a leader of the team. And your leader just basically walks away from football in general, Ben. And I think
when was the sabbatical, Jeff?
This was, I want to say it was the beginning of last year. So I think it was somewhere around the December of not 2013, of 2012. Okay, I think is when he did this. I'd have to go and look up the dates exactly. But he walked away for like 6 months, and I don't think that sat well with Klinsmann. I think
sorry to interrupt you, Joe. Do you know how many times he scored since he's come back?
Actually, he has scored for the national team. I believe he's only scored 1 goal for the national team since coming back, and it was back in October. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'd have to check on his stats in the Gold Cup this year to see how many goals he scored in the Gold Cup. But on current form, Landon Donovan has not scored a goal since October of last year.
Okay.
So now that leads me to my second point, is that Donovan is not on form. He's only scored 1 goal in all competitions since October. Also, when you saw the video of Donovan at the training grounds for the U.S. national team out in California, he looked to be carrying about 20 pounds more than normal, Ben. So he looked to me somebody that was out of shape. He also came on social media or on an interview and said that, he's getting older, his body doesn't recover the way it used to, almost like he was setting himself up to be disappointed and being left off the team. But at the same time, I think there was probably a little truth to that, where his body is not recovering as quickly as it used to. Okay? So that was part 2 of it, was that he's just not quite in form. Part 3 of this equation to me is the people that were chosen above him. Okay? Now, I think when you look at some of the last people taken, one of them is Julian Green from Bayern Munich, okay? And he doesn't play for Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga. He plays for like the first team, okay, or the second team. But he's an 18-year-old talent. He had an option. He has dual citizenship, dual eligibility to go for either Germany or the United States. His father is from the United States, was born in at the army base in Germany. And the kid is a talent, Ben. I mean, he's a big-time talent. He's only 18 years old. And Jurgen also has an affinity for German players. He likes these kids that play in Germany or that are from Germany. In fact, Jermaine Jones, who plays in the midfield for the United States, he was previously playing at Schalke before he got moved to Besiktas. But he did an interview for an ESPN program, and the guy did it in German. He didn't do it in English. So, and he's another one of these. Yeah, and he's another one of these kids that was born on an army base in Germany. So Jurgen, seeing Julian Green, he's in the Bayern Munich system. He wanted him, and so and even though Klinsmann's denied it, I think he went to Julian and said, if you come to the United States and you play for the United States or commit to the United States, you will play in this year's World Cup. So I'm telling you right now, we're about 2.5 weeks away from the World Cup. Not only, obviously, Julian Green made the team, but not only will he make the team, he will see time in Brazil. Now, whether he sees a ton of time or he sees just a little bit of time, that's to be determined, depending on where the team is in the group. If they're getting killed, I think Julian Green sees at least 3/4, if not the entire game against Germany if they've been eliminated at that point. But Julian Green will see time at this World Cup. You can bet on it, okay? So Julian Green takes a spot that would have normally gone to Landon Donovan. The second person that I want to point out is Brad Davis from the Houston Dynamo, who we will be talking about him because I don't think we did Houston yet in our MLS preview. Brad Davis is a guy, good left foot, plays well on the left side. Now, Donovan can play both right and left, but he's a better player on the right side. I think Klinsmann wanted the flexibility to be able to beef up that left side late in the game, and Brad Davis gives him that option. Now, I think Landon Donovan's a better player than Brad Davis, but I think Brad Davis gives Jurgen options that Landon doesn't, okay? And then when you combine that with Landon's fitness level, I think that kind of led to Brad Davis being included. The last person I want to point out that I think made the team over Landon Donovan is Chris Wondolowski. Now, even though they don't play the exact same position, the key with Wondolowski is he's a change of pace player as opposed to Josie Altidore or Aaron Johansson that can come on and for some reason Wondolowski always seems to get open, Ben. You know, if you've ever watched the United States play, or at least if you caught any of the Gold Cup matches last year for the United States, Wondolowski had a great Gold Cup, and he always seemed to find that gap in space that would allow him that extra time to score that, and for lack of a better term, a cheap goal, if you know what I mean, Ben. You get kind of that goal where you're like, right place at the right time, and you just knock it in, and there's really nothing to it. And Wondolowski gives you that, and I think as a change of pace from a guy like Altidore, or kind of like a guy like Johansson who has a little more speed, Wondolowski gives you that element to your game. So I think.
What about I mean, I must admit, I don't really follow the MLS, but what about Clint Dempsey? How has he played this year?
He's been playing very, very well, and he's the captain of the national side. So Dempsey, I don't think.
I just wonder what kind of form he was in going into the game.
No, he's in much, much better form. Let me while I'm talking to you about this, because I did have one more point that I wanted to bring up. I'll look up Clint Dempsey quickly to look up his statistics on the year here. Just if you'll bear with me 1 second. And currently, Seattle Sounders are leading the Western Conference of MLS. They are 2 points ahead of Real Salt Lake, who played in the final last year. So to give you an idea of how Dempsey's doing, he's played 8 matches. He's got 8 goals and 2 assists. So he is on excellent form. He leads the team in scoring. And you've got a guy like Obafemi Martins, who plays for Nigeria, on his team. He's got Lamar Nagel, who's another decent American player. So you've really got a guy that, Dempsey's playing very, very well at the moment, just to answer your question. He's really solid for them. So let me just go back into quickly, because there was one other name I wanted to mention. He's actually a teammate of Landon Donovan, and that's DeAndre Yedlin. And Yedlin's a young guy. I think he's 21 at best. But the key I want to make with Yedlin is what I think Klinsman's thinking overall. Ben, I think Klinsman looked at the draw in terms of the group of death and everything that's going on. How they're going to have to face Ghana, who they haven't beaten in 8 years. They have to face Germany, who is number 3 in the world, certainly one of the favorites to win the entire tournament. They're talking about Portugal, who is one of the top teams in the world, and Cristiano Ronaldo and all of that. I think Klinsman looked at this draw and said, you know what? There's no way we're getting out of this. There's no way we're surviving this. So what do I want to do? I want to bring in my youth, okay? I want to bring in the youngest team possible that gives me quality on the field. But the reason I want to bring the youth in is because if I bring that youth to the table, it gives them experience on the world stage. And you cannot make that up, Ben, anywhere. You can't, I had this quick little Twitter back and forth with Jeremy St. Louis from beIN Sport. And he said, "Oh, you're going to have 2 more Gold Cups and then World Cup qualifying for the 2018 World Cup." But let's be honest, Ben, qualifying for the World Cup and the World Cup are 2 very, very different creatures. And
cool. And you can say, as an England fan, I know what that means. And
that Gold Cup doesn't even count. Is it an international competition? Yeah, it is, but it's not nearly of the same level as a World Cup. So I think Klinsman is, for lack of a better term, mailing it in here. I think he is admitting defeat. I think he says, you know what, even though we're going to lose in Brazil, what we're going to do is we're going to bring the young squad. We're going to have them learn what it's like to play at a World Cup. And in 2018, with a favorable draw, we're looking to go quarterfinals, semifinals, and really make a thing of this. Also, you've got to remember that Klinsman signed he renewed his contract. He's signed through 2018. So he's locked in, and I think that's honestly at the end of the day, I think that's what Klinsman was thinking with the omission of Landon Donovan. So sorry to go on my Donovan, tangent, but I think that it was not one factor or the other, Ben. I think it was all of these factors that led to that decision. Okay, and I think that's just. I mean, what do you think, Ben? I mean, I don't know if you've heard any of this over in England at all, but what do you think of my hypothesis, let's say?
It does sound right on the money. I must admit, I don't really follow the MLS that much, and when the World Cup comes around, I usually just I tend to ignore the rumor mill beforehand. I guess I'm a bit disheartened as an England fan because when you said qualifications different to the actual tournament, I think it reminds me of how many times that's been proven. Because theoretically, England have tried to get into have got into many World Cups, going in as one of the top 6 favourites, and some of the times been knocked out in the group. But as far as what you said about just phoning it in, I don't know. I don't know what he's tried in the friendlies beforehand. Has he tried? Has he brought in a new player to see what they're like, or do you think it's just a pure gamble?
No. He has brought in. He's been experimenting. I would say since the Gold Cup last year. He's been.
Oh, really?
Yep. Now with the Gold Cup, because it was in the summer, he didn't want to bring in any of his European squad because the European players were just coming onto their break, and it's obviously you're coming off a 40-match season. You go in, and then some of those players might have played in Champions League or Europa, and then you bring them into a competition in the summer. He didn't really want to do that, so he left a lot of his European-based players off the squad, and he played it with what many people would call a B squad of his MLS players. But he's experimented with them, and that's where the Wondolowskis of the world came into play. And some of the fringe European players, like Breck Shea, who was at Stoke, was playing on that squad as well, but actually didn't see much playing time. Now, since then, he's moved into more of an experimental role with experimental formations. He's trying to solidify a back line for a back four to figure out what he wants to do back there, because there are some question marks back there, which is unusual for an American team. Usually the goaltending in back four are usually the givens, and it's the midfield and the forwards that are always the question marks. This year it's the reverse. It's the midfield and forwards are pretty much given, and it's the back line that's the question mark. So he's been doing a lot of experimentation there, and experimentations with formations as well. They played a 2-2 match against Mexico, I'd say about a month and a half ago, where they took a 2-0 lead on and they had and I forget the formations he used, but they had played it one way in the first half, and then in the second half made changes and then played it a different way in the second half. And in the first half they took the 2-0 lead and then gave it away in the second half to the Mexican side. So he's experimented even within the game in terms of formations and that sort of thing. So he's really been playing around with it, and I think he's finally solidified or determined what he wants for midfield and what he wants for that overall. But I think his question marks were basically, with Donovan. The rest of the factors played into the decision making, in my opinion.
I do think you're probably right to a certain extent. I do think but then you don't know what he's trying to do going forward, because obviously it's better to have a younger team, especially if the more experienced players like you Clint Dempsey's, like you said, and Donovan are getting older. 4 years time, where they're going to be. So if this is the youth that's coming through, it's probably not too bad an idea coming out of a group that realistically, even most American fans don't think it's they're going to come out of. Looking at the odds, I wouldn't be that surprised if USA cause some upsets, but I think it's less likely they qualify than they do. So maybe that's what he wants to try, and maybe his aim is to for the 2018 World Cup to give it a real shot and give these players some World Cup experience. So then, if they do take them back for the 2018 World Cup, they're not young kids scared to go and play against the best in the world.
Right, I agree with you. So just want to give you the rundown. They open on the 16th against Ghana, which many in the United States are looking as the game that they need to win. They're opening against Ghana. Then on the 22nd, they play Portugal at Manaus, like we talked about earlier, and then they close the tournament. And for the United States' sake, hopefully against a German side that's already qualified, but against Germany in Recife. So that will be that's basically our Group G analysis. Ben, I know we're kind of running over time here, because we do have the WSOP Fantasy Draft. So I think what we'll do is maybe skip over the MLS section, and we'll bring them up next week, the Timbers, the Colorado Rapid, and the Columbus Crew. So, Ben, why don't you take us into SirBob's ManCity Corner, and then we'll close it out.
Yeah, we will do, yeah. Basically, it's just Yaya Toure that's kind of throwing the toys out the pram, if you ask me. Yaya was away on the so I could just get the link up. My internet's frozen. Have you got the link in front of you just to give them the story, Joe? Just while it's just running out.
I do. Let me call it up here quickly.
It's okay. I think is it loading? Oh no, yeah, it's okay. It's just
All right, so I can jump in. Yaya Toure told beIN Sport that he could leave Man City in the summer, and again hinted he could seek a return to Barcelona. Now this all stems from Yaya being upset, and Ben, you might actually have more news on this being over in England. But this all stems from the fact that Yaya said that the squad ignored his birthday and didn't wish him a happy birthday, and he was very upset by this. And so this has all kind of gained steam in a recent week or so, Ben. I don't know if you have the story.
Oh, it's okay. It's come on now. It's my fault. I apologise. Yeah, like I said, it was just toys being thrown out the pan. I was trying to actually find where they was when it happened. It was Abu Dhabi, actually. So they was on the plane, and apparently the whole team sang happy birthday to him, and he doesn't feel that that's enough, saying that big players for other clubs, say like the Barcelonas and the like, were getting Bugattis for their birthday, and even though he said he didn't expect a Bugatti, he thought that they should have made a bigger deal out of it. To me, it just kind of feels like that's him being a bit too big for his boost, and I don't know. It seems like him just being a bit spoiled, Joe. I mean, if you're earning this kind of money and your friends sing you happy birthday, I mean, what kind of bonus does he want? I mean, I'd imagine that he's on a big. I don't know his exact wages per week, Joe, but he's on a big salary there. So I'm not sure exactly what they expect. I mean, you know, all these companies across the world. I don't know about you, Joe, but my company doesn't buy me a big present for my birthday. I mean,
I think honestly, I think it's a little childish, if you ask me. I think it's a little childish.
This is exactly what I thought. It just seems that he wants to be in the limelight. He wants everybody to, you know, bow down and be to him. It just, to me, it's exactly like a 3 or 4 year old girl banging her fists on the stairs saying, I want, and I think he's come across as spoiled and a bit of an idiot, if you ask me, really. I mean, if you feel like that, it's one thing, and if you go behind closed doors and, you know, talk to your friends, or you talk to your manager or the chairman or whoever it is, that's one thing. But to actually go onto Twitter, a social medium, and say that to the whole world, I think he's come across is detrimental to how people view him, especially fans of teams other than Manchester City.
Right, I agree. We'll have to see, though. I mean, you know, we talked about Man City at length in the English section, but we never really talked about Yaya Toure leaving. Somehow we avoided talking about it, which is amazing to me because we talked about pretty much every single player.
This is true, yeah.
If Yaya Toure does leave, whether it be because of this or not, where do you put Man City's chances of repeating their championship?
Ooh. He's a massive player for Manchester City. Massive player. I think Yaya Toure, one of the best midfielders in the Premier League for me. He is so good. He doesn't tire. He's up and down. To me, there's not many players like Yaya Toure that play midfield anymore, and he's a joy to watch. He really is an absolute joy to watch, and it would be such a major loss. And I personally think if he leaves, who do you replace him with? Who can you replace him with?
You know,
I think he's a different type of midfielder to me. He's a little bit more kind of like old school, kind of 10 years ago midfielder that's somehow got into this present day at the top level. You just don't seem to see him anymore, and he's got the skills of a European footballer with the body of an African footballer. To me, he's got the best of both worlds, and that's what makes him real class, in my opinion.
You took the words right out of my mouth. He is a different player. He's a world-class midfielder, but he plays in a style that's very different. It's kind of a refreshing physical, Ben, is the way I would describe it. He's a physical player, but he plays it with such finesse, and I think he's a difficult replacement. I don't know how Man City's able to replace him and still continue on doing what they do the way they do it. So, that would be my only thing about that. So, Ben, I know we cut out the MLS. We will definitely get to that next week, which will be the Columbus Crew, Colorado Rapids, and Portland Timbers. I guess it'll give you. I'm going to start up the exit music. I was going to say, I guess it'll give you a week to kind of prep those teams up and see what familiarize yourself with it a little bit. So next week, again, like I said, we'll do those three teams, and we'll postpone our last section of MLS previews for the following week, and we'll get into the scores. And I apologize for cutting this a little early, but we do have the WSOP Fantasy Draft coming up next for Low Limit Poker Radio listeners. I don't think we're going to be broadcasting that. I just think we're going to be doing that ourselves. So if you want in on that, the best thing to do is tweet at myself, which is JPUcello, or tweet at Ben, which is TheMachine1984, and let us know you want in on that, and we'll go ahead and set that up. So next week we'll preview the MLS teams. We'll do the scores as well. Ben, you and I are going to talk about the promotion and relegation teams in each group in Europe, and we're also going to finish out Group H: Belgium, Argentina, Russia, and South Korea. Then on June 9th, we are going to do a mammoth World Cup only show, pretty much. We're going to talk about just the World Cup, the teams. We're going to make our predictions. We're going to make our bracket predictions, and we'll go through and hopefully Ben and I will give you a winner. So, Ben, any final thoughts?
No, I think we covered everything, really. And it's good to be back, and I thank everyone that listens to the show, and I enjoyed it.
I'm glad to have you back. So I am Joe Ucello.
And I'm Ben the Machine.
And you were listening to episode 29 of Low Limit Football on Low Limit Poker Radio. Thanks and good night.
Thanks for listening.